Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. Man, I've got like the coolest dude, funny as hell, and literally one of the best, most innovative, great guitar players of the last, long time. I don't want to say because it's a really long time, and he's just a great dude with one and only Paul Gilbert. Real quick, 2 announcements. One, Joe Satriani, thank you for hooking this up. I really appreciate it. And don't forget, you can now watch this on YouTube in addition to listening to the show on all the podcast channels. All righty, in case you've been living in a cave, Paul Gilbert from platinum album sales and #1 chart success as a founding member of Mr. Big, to frightening the guitar community with new levels of ferocious picking technique with Shred Pioneer's Racer X, to exploring punk, pop, classical, blues, jazz, and progressive instrumental styles in his solo career. Paul Gilbert's recorded a massive amount of stunning stunning guitar music, all while circling the globe to play sold-out arenas from Japan to Jakarta. Did you really play in Jakarta?
I've played many times in Jakarta, and
really?
Surabaya, and Borneo, and the Philippines, and just it's sometimes easier to say where I haven't played. I haven't played in Greenland yet, or Antarctica. I think Metallica played there, didn't they?
Hey, I got some promoters from Greenland eagerly listening to this, so I smell a Greenland trip for you in 2020.
I'd love something about that place. I'm curious.
We're having a Kickstarter campaign, Get Paul to Greenland. Paul's style stands out for its rare combination of accuracy, creativity, and power, all which are balanced with his real good sense of humor and his genuine love of music. He's best known for his solo work and for his work with Mr. Big and Racer X, but he's also toured with Satriani's G3. He's played a ton of tribute concerts with the legendary drummer Mike Portnoy, and he's been integral in the design of his signature Ibanez PGM and Fireman guitars. Just the 30th anniversary of the PGM. We'll talk about that later as well. His legacy as a guitar instructor began when he was a wee child of 18, when he was hired to teach at GIT in Hollywood. His intense rock videos and DVDs have inspired legions of guitarists to improve their accuracy, speed, and phrasing. No joke, I have heard more people tell me they got good listening and inspired listening to your videos than anybody else. And these are guys in all different genres. So, hats off to you, man. Years as a columnist for Guitar Player and Premier Guitar magazines, along with giving countless clinics, private lessons, and serving as the dean of MI in Japan for 5 years, have given Paul deep experience in the art of communicating music to all levels of guitarists. He also has an online rock guitar school at ArtistWorks, which we'll talk about, which helps guitar players everywhere improve their technique and musicality. And he is constantly, like almost daily, updating that. So you should check that out. And of course, his great Guitar Escape is his exciting yearly event for those who want more information and inspiration on guitar. That comes up 2020 in Glen Cove, Long Island. We'll talk about that. Paul's released 15 solo full-length studio albums, including his last album, Behold Electric Guitar, which we're going to talk about today. Great record, a lot of fun. He's had 5 albums at Racer X, 7 with Mr. Big, along with tons of guest appearances on other records. As I said, he's got a great sense of humor, which I'm looking forward to experiencing today. Dude, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for that nice introduction.
Dude, I'm exhausted.
And my apologies for having to hunker down. I can't move my computer because there's a cat barrier that I've built around the screen, so my cat won't attack my hands while I'm typing. She was taking hunks of flesh out of my fingers, and I kind of need these. So my solution is to do this.
It's amazing the sacrifices we make for our pets.
The sacrifices. She probably made some sacrifices too. She can't reproduce anymore.
Hey man, first congratulations, because you have a really massive catalog, and that's a ton of stuff for a solo artist. I mean, I know all the other stuff you've done, but as a solo artist, you put out a lot of material, man. That's very uncommon.
Well, they used to pay me.
15, I feel you, man.
Back in the day,
there used to be incentive to do that.
I had this career in Japan where I could really pay the rent with those things.
Yeah.
And I also musically, I was pretty motivated. Now I had this harebrained scheme of wanting to be a singer, and with Mr. Big, I always sang a lot of harmonies, and with Racer X, it wasn't really an option because that was heavy metal, and I don't have a heavy metal voice. but I almost had like a pop rock, I kind of, my hero was Robin Zander
Oh God.
and Todd Rundgren, and I didn't have voices, anywhere close to those guys, but I was sort of tried to push myself in that direction, and so I had all these records that I released in Japan where I'm trying to first and foremost be a songwriter and a singer, and then because I was known as a guitar player, I would put the whittly whittly in the holes, and it's strange looking back at those now because I really hear music differently than I used to. So it's hard for me to listen to those these days.
What do you mean? 15 records in 20 years, man. That's a lot of music, dude.
Yeah, I used to listen to it a lot. Yeah, I think my taste or my hearing has changed a lot too, so that could affect it.
Yeah.
But I really I feel like I'm sort of starting over.
In what way?
In that the way I listen to and the way I feel music now is really different than it used to be, and that surprises me. I remember reading interviews with other musicians that I admired, and they would talk, like for example, I remember reading or hearing an interview with Neil Peart from Rush, and he was talking about, oh yeah, I'm listening to all this new music, and I thought, how do you do that? Because for the longest time I would only listen to things that I grew up with. I would
Right.
only listen to the Beatles, and I would only listen to Robin Trower, and I would only listen to Van Halen and Todd Rundgren, and the stuff. I kind of cut off in my mid-20s, and just everything that I heard up until then, that was all I would listen to, and I put a kind of a barrier against new stuff. And I must admit, the new music that I listen to isn't necessarily new in terms of being released recently. It's just new for me. I'll explore things that I haven't heard before. A lot of times it actually is older music, but it's unfamiliar music, and it's the genres will be different, and that's I never really did that before. I think actually a lot of it has to do with my hearing, because I don't like, especially like the way music is recorded, where you can do a lot of layering, because it's so easy, with Pro Tools and modern production, you can layer forever, and that those kind of productions are hard for me to listen through, because they're so dense that a lot of times I just can't hear it. It just sounds like a wall of noise. It's other people can hear it because they've got healthy ears.
Sure.
But for me, if I go back and hear like a live recording of the Duke Ellington Orchestra in the late 50s, it's so sparse and it's all live, and so live music, people tend to make room for each other.
Yeah.
If there's a clarinet solo, the whole band will step back dynamically, and sort of the band mixes themselves. Where with overdubs, you're kind of like, okay, it's my turn to overdub this, so I'll play it as loud as I can, and then the sound engineer has to sort out the dynamics, and and dynamics is not only volume, it's also the texture, and I think that's what I've discovered, at least with my own experience with overdubbing, is it's really hard to create the same, to create really the appropriate texture and dynamics that you would if you were actually playing live with a group. And the new album that I did was wonderful that way, because we did the whole thing live. There's not a single overdub on the record, and it kind of, I mean, I'm sure our engineer did a great job mixing, but I don't think he had to work as hard as if we had layered 90 tracks.
Yeah. Has it given you a bit of a second wind, in a sense, that you're now like taking on new music into your head?
Oh man, I love, I really, just the whole way that I sort of connect to music, both as a listener and as a player, is again, is so different, and it's so, I love it. It really, the nice thing, like when I first started, when I was like diagnosed as having hearing loss, I was really worried, like, oh my God, I'm a musician. This is like horrible. But it's probably the thing that's been affected the least. And in a way, it almost is an advantage sometimes, because I have to listen not to what's outside of me, but I have to listen to what's inside of me. because you have, I think everybody has I call it the inner melodic generator. And if you want to test that out, just create some silence around yourself and say your name without talking. Just sort of close your eyes and you can hear it inside, and then try a melody, sing happy birthday without making any sound, and you'll start to connect to your inner melodic generator. And this is from having taught so much and realizing that human beings, we're primarily visual creatures. Our eyes are, we really depend on that as a way to connect to everything. And but music is not, the reason music at the end of the day is sound. But I think because we're such visual creatures, we like to look at things. And so guitar players tend to look at our fingers, we visualize shapes, and some people even read standard notation or tablature. And it's so tempting to connect that way, and then you sort of forget to listen, and both to the exterior sound, what it sounds like, and also to listen inwardly to what ideas you have on the inside of you. And so that's been the biggest discovery to me, is to listen more and more to what's happening inside. And to me, the funniest thing is, like, sometimes there's nothing there. You go, okay, well, let me search inside and find these beautiful melodies that are going on, and you stop and you concentrate. You go, boy, it's quiet in there. or the other realization is, like, oh, when I actually honestly listen to what's in my head, it's really different than what I'm playing. And wouldn't it be nice to actually connect those things and play a little bit more like what's actually coming from inside, rather than just run through these patterns that I learned at school.
So this is having this hearing loss, in a sense, has forced you to be more involved with what's going on inside.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
That's good, man.
The melodic generator is still working.
Awesome. I think that's the next product. Yeah. In a melodic generator.
And just like anything, the more you practice it, the more you work on it, it improves. And I developed a language that I can use to work with it. To me, I use the language of intervals. Rather, some people use solfege. I think it's called solfege, like do, re, mi, fa, so, that terminology. My wife, who has perfect pitch, does that. She was trained with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But I use the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And of course, there's as you go through that, there's you can have a minor third or a major third or a flat 5 or a perfect fifth. But that terminology, it's nice to have a sort of intellectual label for the notes.
Yeah, for sure.
And as I'm talking about all this, I'm thinking, what a weird way to start an interview. But this is
we could talk about your string gauge if you prefer.
Yeah. But this is sort of my daily existence, is the joy of not necessarily I knew about intervals a long time ago, but my the amount that I dig in. And for example, the other day I was doing a clinic in Montana, and I decided to play Tomorrow Never Knows, the Beatles song.
And a great song.
And step one is, as I look at the melody, because I did it instrumentally, I didn't play the melody on guitar. And step one is to play the melody on guitar, and to do that, I use the intervals. I go, if it's in C, I don't have perfect pitch, so I got to find a C. No. So turn off your mind, relax, and flow downstream. So that's the third. It goes 1, 2, 3. So 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 5, 1, 3. Or well, that's the thing, is I have to visualize it. So it's 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 5, 1, 3, 1, 5, the lower fifth. Then 5, 5, 5, 7, 1, minor 7, 5, 5, 5, 7, 1, and then for the jam in the middle, the old me would say, like, okay, well, just take your minor scale, because that's what your fingers know, from playing all those Iron Maiden songs when I was a teenager. and then you use music theory, move that up 2 frets, and that becomes Mixolydian. And as long as you don't emphasize anything ever, and play really fast, which I've certainly worked on, then you're okay. And the only problem is if you start to emphasize anything. Like if you stay on a note a little bit long, you start to give importance to that note. And then you have to worry, well, is it a strong one? Am I landing on one of the chord tones? Or, and before, when my ears were better, I could make those decisions by just sort of listening as I went.
Right.
Now, since my ears aren't as good, I've got to actually know what I'm doing. And I have to have a better, again, it's not like my visual sense is something I don't use anymore. I still know the shapes, but I know them more in terms of what to emphasize. I know where the chord tones are within them, and I developed new shapes that allow me to more easily hit those strong melodic targets with more accuracy and more control. And so the other thing that I started doing is I thought, instead of just burning through Mixolydian like I would do when I was 22, I thought, I've got this drone bass note going on, and so the bass is only sending the message of the root. The bass isn't saying whether it's major or minor. It's not giving any harmonic information other than the root. So I've got control of that, and I started playing other melodies, and I thought, well, how many Beatles melodies can I put? And so I started going na 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 na. So doing like Girl, or just and trying to do it. But my goal is to be able, because I can sing those first take. On kazoo, I can nail those the first time because I know the melody, and my inner melodic generator knows that melody. But my job as a guitar player, as an instrumentalist, is to know those, know like melodic vocabulary enough where I can nail those melodies, hopefully first take. And I can't yet. I'm getting way better at it.
That's
I can almost. I mean, I can sometimes get them, but I still, it takes a lot of. I got to really concentrate. But it's so much different than like, okay, take this shape and burn through it.
Yeah, that's amazing how much shit is going through your head while you're doing that.
Well, you use every tool you can.
Yeah.
Because the goal is you want to make it easier on yourself, and you want to succeed and play the melody right. And it's just something I didn't work on before, because I didn't grow up listening to melodic instrumentalists. I grew up listening to burning instrumentalists.
Yeah.
And the melodies I heard as a kid were vocalists. I thought that was the singer's job.
Right. Not the.
And I just thought, it's not my job to play melody. That's, if you listen to Van Halen record. I mean Eddie Van Halen has impeccable sense of melody.
Right.
And when he wants to, he certainly can do it. But the stuff that he's known for, and the stuff that I gravitated towards, would be like, I get my melody from David Lee Roth, and I get my shred from Eddie.
Sure.
And so as a guitar player, and now what I do, like one of my projects recently, I learned Running with the Devil, the Roth parts.
Oh, okay. So you never listened to like Jeff Beck or anything like that?
I wasn't into that. I mean, I listened to it. I was just like, because I wanted the burning stuff.
Yeah, I get that.
And which is probably, my punishment now is, if I get any like, harsh comments from, YouTube or anything, it's usually guys going like, will you throw that slide guitar away and shred again,
Wow.
And I understand that, I was in that same world when I was a teenager.
It's funny. There's always, someone's got to make a comment. I mean, like, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but like, you're one of the best guitar players around, and like, someone's got to find a way to criticize. It's just like, I can't stand that shit.
I'm happy they're paying attention.
No, I get it. I know, I get it. It's just like,
and really, the majority of the comments are positive.
Are positive. Thank God.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Your work ethic is really strong, and as is your passion for playing music. Is there an origin to that work ethic, or what is the thing that makes you or has made you so driven?
Fear.
Touche.
Yeah. Well, I would say the first thing I can remember is when I was a kid, my dad was a potter. He made ceramics.
Right.
And he would let me come into the pottery studio and mess around with the clay once in a while. And I went in, I must have been like 7 or 8 years old, and I made a hippopotamus, like piggy bank. So it was, a hippopotamus. It was
Yeah.
hollow on the inside, a little slot on top, and you could put, coins in it. And he fired it in the kiln. I glazed it, and I just did it for, something to do. And now every couple of months, gallery owners would come and visit our house to buy pots from my dad. That's how he made a living. And they saw my hippo bank sitting on the shelf, and they said, "Well, we'd like that one." And my dad said, "Well, I didn't make that's my son's, but I'll ask him if he wants to sell it." And so he came. I was in my room playing with GI Joes or something, and he said, "Hey, they want to buy your hippo. You want to sell it?" And I had no idea, never even thought of it. But I think I sold it for $10 or something. But $10.
Yeah, when you're 7 back then.
When I was 7 back then, that was significant. And
you'd have to work 3 hours to get that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was I didn't have any kind of job. There's just no way.
Right.
So anyway, I sold the bank, the hippo bank, and I started to calculate in my head, like, if I made 3 hippo banks a day and sold, of course, I had no idea if they would actually sell, but I just started to like add up in my head, and this sort of like work equals money thing. And I think that's like the seeds of my, capitalist, whatever. So that made me sort of want to work, and just really the fact that have in the world, you could be born anytime. And another thing goes back to my dad. My dad used to say, like, we're so lucky to have been born when there's electricity and Novocaine. It's like, it's a big deal. I mean, a couple hundred years ago, you get a cavity.
Yeah.
There's, the dentist is going to have a whole different, it's going to be a whole different experience going to the dentist without, pre-Novocaine, and also electricity. I mean, I'm, if I play acoustic guitar, it's not pleasant. 95% of my licks go away because I can't bend a wound G string.
Sure.
And I mean, I suppose I can still put a plain G string on, but it's quiet. And the style of guitar that I love just is pretty lame on an acoustic. And so I really depend on electricity to do the main thing that I do as my artistic passion. So man, I just appreciate that I live in a time when there's electricity and Novocaine, and I mean, I was even around when there was vinyl, and you could like write the majority of songs on a record, and then somebody else could write the hit, and then you'd get paid for all these songs that nobody cares about because they're on the same record as the hit. So I've just looked, I've had so much good fortune, and I just don't want to squander that. It's sort of like if life is a button and you press it and good things happen, I just want to keep pressing that button.
Yeah.
And so, to not work is like, man, every time I press that button, something really cool happens, and I'm, it's going to sit there and not press it. That's ridiculous. So, I just, to me, it's not so much like work. It's more like, I've been presented with these opportunities, and my hands are still, my fingers still move, and, I can hear well enough to still do it, and man, that's another thing is, like, if I couldn't play music and I had to get like a job that depended on hearing, which is pretty much most jobs, I'd be in rough shape. I used to joke with my manager that if everything fell through with musically, I could still get a job at the Burger King. Because like when I first moved to LA, there was a Burger King on Highland in Hollywood. And I'd always walk past it thinking, like, if this falls through, I'm just going to have to get a job at that Burger King. And I couldn't do it now. They wouldn't hire me because I'd be useless. I couldn't, large fries, and I couldn't hear the order. And so I'm so fortunate, the job I have at Artist Works where people send in videos, and I can if they talk, I can crank it up, and usually they don't have to talk, they just play, and I can just communicate with them purely on a musical level. And man, it's like a tailor-made job for that fits both my abilities and my disabilities. And that's like, I'm just the luckiest person in the world for that.
So for you, the work ethic is really not, it's just driving the good stuff. As you said, it's just pushing that button that good stuff comes out of, and why not get good stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Japan, you've had tremendous success there in many different ways. I was curious, what are the things about Japan that appeal to you most? And what are maybe the 2 or 3 most important things you learned from your experience, either living or working or just from Japan?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is I tried to study Japanese for probably 5 or 6 years. And I learned a little bit of Japanese and a lot of humility. Because like that was a button that I pressed and
nothing good came out.
Well, good things came out, but very slowly. It was really, I really was optimistic, like, oh, if I study something, I can learn. And of course I did, but it was just slow going. But anyway, that was later on, that was years after I went to Japan for the first time. And it was just, the first time I went with Mr. Big, and we were all just surprised at our, of course we wanted success, but we had already done club tours in America, and the clubs were packed, but our first tour in Japan was theaters, and pretty big ones. And I remember just sound checking, going like, oh man, this is a beautiful place, it's big, this is like a real gig. And then it was packed, and the people were going nuts, and they'd be chasing us. We actually couldn't leave the hotel. It was
like the Beatles.
Yeah, it was like the hotel would be surrounded, and they had to, the promoter would have to come up with ways where we could go through the kitchen, because a lot of the transportation in Japan is on the bullet train.
Right. Right.
Like other countries, you take a tour bus, but in Japan, there's no tour bus. You always just get on the train, and so you have to walk through the train station. But we couldn't. It would be mayhem if we walked through the regular public part of the train station. So we'd have to go through the kitchen and the back way and do all this stuff. So and I remember just wanting to go out and get something to eat. And I remember Pat, the drummer, and I would find ways to sneak through the parking garage, and we'd jump over the fence, and it was really James Bond tactics to get something. You get a ramen for lunch, to sneak past the fans. So it was wonderful problems.
Yeah, right. That's great.
But at the same time, then I'd come home and we would have much more subdued existence, and so I think that kept us sane. It was a little dose of man, it's really, if that was everywhere, if you had if you were globally famous, I don't know how that would be a weird thing to handle, because you couldn't turn it off, and it was no problem to turn it off. We'd leave Japan, everything get back to back to normal other places.
What did you get out of Japan? What are some lessons that you learned from that whole experience? Or culturally, was there things you absorbed from the Japanese culture that you took in?
Well, it was the first time I had ever gone to a foreign country, and I was pretty young. I was probably, I don't know, 20, 22, 23. And so I was just scared, because basically I was a kid that grew up in a rural town in Pennsylvania, or small town. I grew up in an old refurbished farmhouse, and but anyway, I got to Japan, and my fear was that I couldn't speak the language at all, and I thought people would just push me out of, if I tried to sit down in a restaurant and I couldn't speak the language, I thought they would just say, oh, you got to get out of here because you're unqualified.
Interesting.
And that was not the case at all. People were overwhelmingly friendly and helpful, and and it was wonderful. And so once I was forced to get over that fear because I was hungry and I had a day off. and so I was like, okay, here we go. And I went out to a restaurant, and it was wonderful. And it was so wonderful. It was like, well, I'm going to do this more. And then I really started to enjoy it. And so after getting over the initial fear, it was great. What else? Yeah, I mean, I'm just remembering the gigs, and it was always packed, and it there's a lot to think about. I'm trying to pick out. I mean, there was also the downside of it, which was I had we were projecting an image. We were like a hair, what later became known as a hair band,
sure.
Which I very much wanted. I was into that. I grew up as a fan of Kiss. I wanted a hair like Paul Stanley. And then, we're out there rocking and trying to basically be like, hey, we're these wild, crazy guys playing rock and roll. And, but I remember being on stage and realizing that in a kind of an emotional way, that what people were seeing was not actually me.
What were they seeing?
Because I'm actually not like this wild, crazy guy. I'm kind of a normal guy that just wants to be a musician.
Right.
And
that must have helped you, though.
Well,
that they saw that you must have.
That was the seeds of me wanting to be a solo person.
Okay.
Or it was like that desire to I want them to actually know who I am. And that's not getting done. The person that they know when I was in, Mr. Big Famous Big Hair Guy, there might have been an element, that's who I am when I'm, playing that song.
Yeah.
But pretty quickly it's like, man, I would love them to know, other parts of me. If what an just that's what I started to feel, and that among other things led to in the mid '90s me leaving the band and trying to be a singer, and also it was self-discovery, because being a singer is not really a great idea, but it was an idea I had to try, and if I hadn't tried it, it would have bugged me forever. So it's nice that I could scratch that itch.
How did you feel? I mean, your singing is fine.
Well, that's nice of you, but
I mean, I'm not being nice. I mean, that's singing's fine.
I think what it is that as a when you have the great opportunity to put music out there on the same, I mean, for example, however, in the old days it was vinyl, then it became CD, now it's Spotify, whatever it is. When you put your art into the world, it's there with Mozart and the Beatles and Beethoven and Bach, and it's all there, and I can't help but going like, if does it deserve to be there with those other amazing people? And so to me as a singer, if I put my singing out there, it's there standing next to Steven Tyler and Paul McCartney and Robert Plant. And it may be okay, but it's, those.
Yeah, but is that a fair standard of comparison for anybody?
Well, as a guitar player, I've got much more confidence. I don't. If I play something, I don't mind putting it up there with the greats of guitar.
Right.
That doesn't make me, want to cower and go hide in a cave somewhere. I feel like,
right.
It's. I mean, it has to be style particular. Like I wouldn't want to put my stuff next to Chet Atkins because he's so much, his finger picking is good, so much better, and it's just a different kind of thing. But I can do a G3 tour and I don't come home feeling clobbered. It's like, all right, that was fun. It was more, I feel like I'm with people that we're just speaking our language and everything's smooth. But if I had to do like a vocal divas tour or something, and I got to stand up at a microphone next to all the
Paul Rogers,
the top tier singing cats of the world, I'm going to come home going like, oh.
Okay, but let me ask you this. Look at all the songs over the years that have been hits, and just general hits, Billboard top 50, right? Most of them didn't have anywhere near the guitar playing that you do. And many of them, the vocals was like, okay.
Well,
right?
they probably had good songwriters then.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But what I'm saying is that's a hard, you're holding yourself to.
What's the first song that comes to mind? For some reason, when you said that, I'm thinking like, I was working, or you were working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. No, but maybe I could sing it. Don't you want me?
No, but I was talking to, for example,
I should cover that. That would be good.
There you go, on your neck. Oh my God. Paul Gilbert shreds "Don't You Want Me" and sings. That would be hilarious, man. No, but that's a tough standard of comparison you're holding yourself to, like the best. Because I mean, that's not like what I'm saying is the standard that you're holding yourself to. If I wanted to do an album, you'd probably say, Craig, put an album out there. You wouldn't say, dude, you're not that good, don't put an album out there. I mean, and maybe you would, I don't know. And it would be 100% accurate. But
well,
go
ahead.
We all tend to hold, when you're driven, and I've learned this because I used to do this to myself, unmerciless. You have this ridiculous standard that's stupid, like you would never judge your neighbor like that, but yet you apply this fucking standard to yourself that's like, well, you got this much wiggle room and you have wiggled outside of this much, whereas everybody else, you give them this much room,
That's I'm going to pay you for the therapy after this. It's going to be good for me.
No, I'm just saying, because I'm like, your voice is fine, man. I mean, if you compare yourself to Paul Rogers, it's not going to be as good. But I mean, that's not the standard that people listen to stuff by. Otherwise, nobody would sell anything, or nobody would listen to anything.
Well, I guess what it is you want to be able to connect to your inner melodic generator, and so if I hear a melody
right
inside and I want to be able to get it out through whatever means possible. Yes. And my voice is a frustrating in its limitations.
Right. I get it.
It's all tone and texture aside, the range of it is very much like having only the bottom two strings on a guitar. Like, if I play the A string on the 22nd fret, just like bend it like crazy, that's about the highest note I can get. And that's the thing, like recently the thing that's given me so much joy and opened the world up to me is that taking a melody, typically a vocal melody, just because that's where you find most melodies. Yeah. And you play it on guitar, the guitar never runs out of the notes. Right. There is no singer that's ever going to sing a note that's off the fretboard.
Right. Absolutely.
The highest like screaming when Steven Tyler sings, I'm back, that really high note and Back in the Saddle.
Yeah, great song.
That's just like a bending your D to your E at the 15th fret on the B string.
Sure.
And you got a lot more room than that on the fretboard.
Yes.
And so it's really interesting to me because I have so many vocal melodies in my head from being a fan of vocal music. And that's like I should say both my hobby and my passion now is just to like go through all the songs that are in here and see if I can get them on guitar. And man, is it fun. And, I grew up in the 70s with like AM gold kind of, radio. Yeah. So a song like,
here goes. All right.
You got the good way of talking. You got the better of me. Leo Sayer, You Make Me Feel Like Dancing.
Yeah, I love that song.
Man, play that on slide and it's killer.
Yeah, I love that song.
So I grew up with so many, it's a different way of thinking back about music, because normally if you're a guitar player, you go like, oh man, I love Uli Roth or Randy Rhoads, or those kind. And I still love those players, and there's still you'll still find melodies. But if you really want a treasure trove of melody, if you go to singers, you really find some amazing stuff.
Yeah, and I'll never forget. There's certain things people have said in interviews. No matter how many interviews I've had, I'll remember. And one of them was a guy named Cliff Goodwin, who is in somewhere in Massachusetts. He played with Joe Cocker. He was his music director and guitar player, like when he was really big, for 12 years, probably like in the 70s.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he says, "Craig, no song ever won a Grammy because of the snare drum." And I was like, yeah, because he was talking about the same thing. Because man, it's all about the melody and the vocals.
Yeah.
So it's a very good point. What's the advantages? You've had a successful career as a band leader or as part of a band and as a solo artist. Advantages and disadvantages of each.
Well, everything's easier if somebody is the leader.
Yeah,
that's my experience. It's just, and I don't really have. I mean, I wanted to be in a band when I was a teenager because that was what I listened to. I loved the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and Van Halen, and as a fan, that's what I was into. But having been in bands, it's hard. Although you know what, like Racer X, maybe we weren't really given the chance because I left early. I sort of put the kibosh on that pretty early on. We got along pretty well. At least maybe talk to the other guys, and they're like, Paul is a horrible dictator. But to me, we were all friends, and that band went really smoothly. Mr. Big had our ups and downs. I mean, we've been through so much. When we get together, we can have a great time reminiscing, and certainly we've had some great times making music. But often, in contrasting that with the smooth sailing that I have as a band leader. And I just think it's because if somebody is the leader, it just makes it easier.
Yeah.
Because even if the leader does stupid things, at least
it's on them. Yeah,
it's on them. And you don't have to argue about it. It's like you have to follow,
yeah. Someone's got to lead.
Yeah. And so, I hope I'm a benevolent dictator.
A benevolent dictator, yes.
But it's so nice to like right now I've got a band of guys that tour with me and record with me, and I try to be aware of I want to make it fun for them. I don't want to just say you must do this and suffer. I try to draw. It's helpful to me to draw a lot of their creativity and what they want to do. I'm always have an eye on that because like when I bring a song in the old days, I would my demos were like records. I would compose every part, and I would make everybody play every part. And man, it was a lot of work, and not necessarily the best way to go about things, because I would hire these great musicians, and they're just they just have to
the rules.
They just have to play what I wrote. Now, like on the last record I did, I came in with like really skeletal structures of songs.
Is that the first time you did that?
I've done it somewhat before, but I've been going more and more that way. And I just trust the musicians because I hire people that I think are great.
Sure.
And I'll say like, it's in C, and here's the tempo. Do what you do. And rarely do I have to stop and tweak anything.
So let me ask you this.
I'm almost always immediately happy with what they come up with, and I just go like, man, this just sounds great right away. It's and again, I have the luxury of hiring some people that are great, and I kind of know stylistically what I'm looking for. So I hire people that's their language and that's their vocabulary, but it just works great. And boy, it saves time. Before I would spend a year putting together songs and demos, and now it's like, in 20 minutes I can. I'll spend longer than that. I'll get the seed of an idea and chew on it a little bit and try to get an arrangement. Rehearse a little bit with the bass player to kind of see if he's is smiling when he plays it or frowning, and if he's smiling, I'll keep going, and then bring it to the band. But it's so much faster I really think that the band guys enjoy it because they they get to put their stamp on it, their fingerprints on it too.
Do you think you've done that because you want to have more fun, or was this conscious because for a reason, like you wanted to have more fun, or you said, fuck it, I'm just sick of the stress, or like what was the evolution of that?
Well, it's I'm trying to remember when it was just a matter of realizing that if I let great musicians, if I give them more autonomy, it's a better move.
Yeah.
Than me trying to be a micromanager.
Right.
If it depends, and maybe it's depends on the musical style too. If it's a song that really depends on being ultra composed, and the parts really have to be the parts, and if they're not, it's going to fall apart. Then that is what it is. Maybe, you know what it might be is because I'm getting more into blues and jazz. That's more improvisational music.
Yes.
And obviously, if you take like in jazz, I'm not a jazz expert, but my perception of it is that you have this thing called the real book,
right?
And it's like you get a chart of Autumn Leaves or some jazz standard, and it's just a list of chords and the melody. And as long as you have that, everybody brings their own character and fingerprint to it, and then that performance of Autumn Leaves becomes special.
Right.
And that's really different than what I grew up with. What I grew up with is like Van Halen does I'm the One, and they're the only band that can do that. Like, right, I don't want to hear anybody else do that. And maybe I don't even want to hear Van Halen do it except for that recording. Like, it becomes really performance specific. And that's it's really different with jazz. Because jazz, it's more like about this basic strong structure, and then anybody can do their thing with it.
It's interesting that you say that, because when I watched the videos for the new record, which we're going to talk about next, the first thing I thought is, man, these guys are all having so much fun. It was so relaxed.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see that in the room, man. It was just like, and you were kind of like talking to your drummer in one of the videos, and it was almost like he wanted to know, did you want something specific? And you're like, nah, man, just do your thing. And it just seemed so much fun and really relaxed, and it seemed like a really great vibe in there. So, I wonder if I went back and looked at the same situations, or if you even recorded those situations where for prior albums where you tend to be more rigid, I wonder if the vibe would be noticeably different.
Well, I'm thinking back to like, there's an album I did called Alligator Farm, mm-hmm. where I played it pretty much live. I mean, I think I overdubbed the vocals, but the backing tracks were live, and I had 3 guitar players. I could make it sound layered, and we would just get together and sort of work out the parts and rehearse it, and it was much more of like playing it the same every time. Like, and we're trying to get this thing that we play the same every time, and then searching for
like an exercise as opposed to an improvisational hang.
Yeah, and with the newer stuff, every time we play it, there's the part that's left open for improvisation is bigger, and things like a drum fill. Before it might be like, oh, it has to be this drum fill, where now it's like, man, just whatever you feel, because
right.
if
that's a lot of stress that you don't have to deal with too, man.
Yeah, and again, a lot of times what you get that way, because then it puts more, it lets the musicians be more free, but it also makes them work a little harder in a good way.
Yeah, very much so.
And because they're pulling stuff out of themselves, and then when they get it, it makes everybody dig it more, because like the drummer does a great fill, he's happy, and me too. I'm going like, whoa, that's way better than anything I would have thought of.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the really nice part of jazz and blues and improvisational music. It's funny because it reminds me of when I first started doing interviews, like, when Racer X started to do albums. And one of the questions that would often be asked was, if you could jam with anybody, who would it be? And my first gut instinct, I wouldn't, at the time I would never say this, I don't think, but it would be like, well, nobody, because if somebody comes in and jams, it's going to mess it up.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Because we don't jam, we rehearse. You know, we get this song, we play it over and over for 2 months, and then it's finally ready to you know, play on stage, and it's going to be, you know, like the Chinese military, you know, it's
Like a Swiss watch.
yeah, it's just going to be perfect. And you know, no matter how good the jammer is, you know, there's people I love and respect, but I don't want them jamming with us, because, you know, I want them rehearsing with us.
Sure.
And I remember going to, you know, to the NAMM show and watching these NAMM jams, and they'd bring like all these legends on stage, and you just watch it and go like, what a mess. You know, and actually, funny. You know, the thing that that really helped turn my mind around to that was G3.
Oh, seeing how much fun you had there.
Because we would do these jams at the end, and I was kind of dreading it, going like, oh, is it going to be like those horrible NAMM show jams? And you know, I mean, Joe Satriani, who's the head of G3, is not only a great player, but he's a great orchestrator. And so he, you know, chose good, you know, songs that work well for jamming, and just arranged it in such a way where it worked. And, you know, I remember just being surprised and go like, wow, this, not only am I having fun, but the audience seems to like it. They're not bored. And it was completely not what I expected. And I got off that tour going like, maybe this jamming thing, there's something to it.
That's great.
Yeah. So that kind of was one of the things that planted the seeds. And then, of course, you know, one of the reasons that it was the way it was back in the Racer X days is it was heavy metal. And, you know, I love that era of metal, you know, the 70s and early 80s, but it's typically not music where you jam.
No, it's very structured, orchestrated. Two guitar players even playing.
You're not gonna jam a Queensryche tune, you know. It's just, it is what it is.
Or an Iron Maiden tune, just like you said before. Yeah. And
so later on, as I started to get into blues, and the thing that made, and I remember not really being interested in blues and jazz before. I listened to it, and I just didn't really know what all the fuss was about. And so now I listen with different ears, and here's how I listen: is I think I can tell when the player is connecting to their inner melodic generator. And a guy like B.B. King, when you hear him playing a solo, like, you know, he's good at it. Almost every phrase he plays, you can just feel that that's what he's hearing in his head. That's not a lick.
No,
you know, that's not a pattern. You know, I mean, it might. I mean, in a way, you know, everything has to be a lick and a pattern to some extent, but within those choices, he's making the combination that he put together was exactly the way he heard it in that present moment. And I know what with myself, because I've videotaped myself. You know, I've done 8,000 videos from my online school,
right?
And a lot of them have little sections where I'm improvising something. And when I go back and watch it, which I have to because I edit them all, I've noticed like that part of my improvisation I connected, and I played exactly what I heard in my head. That part I didn't, and the part where I didn't still might be the right notes, because you know, I know the patterns, and it still might be in time, and it still might be played with you know, technique, that everything was right, but it wasn't what I was hearing. And I can tell, you know, that it's really easy for me to tell what was connected and what wasn't. And that's, you know, to me, the great blues and jazz players, when you listen to them improvise, it's like, that guy's connected right there.
Who are the guys that you would say, or who off the top of your head, name a few guys that you feel?
Well, B.B. King is probably the one I'm most familiar with. You know, I think Freddie King.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite King.
And I mean, the one, probably the king of them all would be Johnny Hodges, who's a sax player that played with Duke Ellington. And I don't think I've ever heard him play a lick. Everything is a melody. You know, it's just crazy how melodic he is.
I'm gonna have to check his stuff out now.
Yeah, and it's you know, if you're used to rock guitar, you know, when you listen to Johnny Hodges, I mean, this was one of the scariest things that ever happened to me when I was researching Johnny Hodges, and I found out that another person that really loved Johnny Hodges was Lawrence Welk.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, I like a person that Lawrence Welk likes. This is scary.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I remember
this really could be trouble, because, you know, Lawrence Welk when I was a kid was like, you know, sort of, you know, you just didn't want to go there.
When you get put out to pasture, that's what you do. Yeah.
But and so, you know, in terms of like, it's not high energy music. I mean, sometimes, you know, the band get cooking, but it's it tends to be really laid back.
Yeah, you know, like when you get put out to pasture. That's
it's sort of soulful big band.
Yeah.
And but that's why that's why I found it, because the reason I discovered Johnny Hodges was I wanted to learn more about blues melody and blues phrases. And when I listen to guitar players, you know, we all play the same instrument, so we tend to have similar licks. And so it's more a matter of like who plays the same lick the coolest. and it's really rare for you to hear a guitar player doing something that's not kind of based on like the pentatonic scale and the typical places where you bend, and like, you know, stuff that came from Hendrix and B.B. King and Otis Rush and Freddie King. And it's great stuff, but there's a lot of sameness to it.
Yes.
And so I was curious, like, well, what about these jazz guys in the 50s? You know, that what played horns. I wonder if they ever played blues, and if they did, how did they approach it? And so I'd found like Johnny Hodges on the sax, Jimmy Hamilton, clarinet player. I was curious too, because I knew that Eddie Van Halen's dad played clarinet. I knew Pete Townshend's dad played jazz clarinet. I thought they you know, those guys must have heard it when they were growing up. It probably informed their ears. And initially, you know, you go to Wikipedia and look up jazz sax or clarinet, and you find like Benny Goodman and who's the guy, Arnie
Shaw.
Yeah, or Artie Shaw, and a lot of that stuff is really up tempo. You know, it's almost like the speed metal of, you know, of the day. Yeah. Especially the Benny Goodman stuff. They're going, it's like hot for teacher tempo the whole time. And that's not where I want to start. You know, that's it's just going by too quick. And there, you know, there's chord changes, and it's you know, it's really dense, fast, you know, advanced, sophisticated music. And that's like, man, that's too much for me. I can't. Maybe I'll end up there, but I can't start there.
Yeah, sure.
And so as I began to like go through the Wikipedia list of, you know, legendary sax players, you know, Johnny Hodges comes up, and I pull him up, and it's like, whoa, 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 you know, it's really slow. And, you know, on as a guitar player, to copy him is like one of the most technically challenging things.
Because you playing him on slide?
Well, whatever, however you do it, because you're just so naked.
Right.
You know, there's so much space, and you know, so if you, that's it. You're just under the microscope so much when you play that slowly, and any expressive elements that you add, and of course you need those because that's what makes it cool. Any expressive elements that you have are so under the microscope and so obvious that you got to get them right. If you don't have those things together, it's just so, you know, anything that's not right, it's pretty obvious that it's not right. And so to me, it's one of the healthiest things to work on.
It's great that you like have opened to all this at this stage of your career, of your life. It's not common. People oftentimes people shut down the stuff, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I was thinking. I was thinking about like pedals and gear and why that stuff's so appealing. And I think what it is, and I love, you know, I'm never going to stop, you know, tweaking away with that stuff. But I think a lot of it is like you develop your vocabulary, and then you buy a new guitar because you hope it'll make your same lick sound different.
Yeah, or it'll somehow inspire you to, you know, and it does with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's like, I'm playing my same licks on a Telecaster now, and whoa, it's, you know, it's but when I think like, if I really want to take a step forward, learn a melody, every melody is like so much more, will change me and make me grow so much more than a pedal ever will.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's also, you know, there's like you got to push through it, you know, it's work. You know, but here's the thing is like, because I've spent some time in the shoes of a singer, when you work on a melody as a singer, at least with a singer with the physical limitations that my voice has, I hate practicing singing because it gets worse the more I do it. Like because I start to wear out my voice, and so I can't spend all day practicing a vocal melody with my vocals. But on a guitar, I can sit there and play a melody over and over again and feel it and listen to it getting better each time.
Yeah.
And I don't wear anything out. I mean, maybe my calluses, but I'm happy to wear out my calluses because they'll grow back and they'll get stronger. And so to be able to, again, like kind of push the button.
Yeah.
And you push the button and it just keeps sounding cooler. It's getting better and I keep knowing it better. It gets easier. And that's the thing. And there's a little bit of like having to push yourself to, at least push myself to get into it. You get to sit down and it's a different feeling at the start than buying a new piece of gear and having your new lick have some, or having your old lick get some life. But at the end, the new stuff you get is like, it just wakes you up and makes you feel alive.
Totally, man. I agree there. I want to talk about your latest album, Behold Electric Guitar. I really enjoyed it, and I just wanted to ask you about a couple of the songs on it that I particularly enjoyed. First one is Let That Battery Die. Man, what a beautiful song that is. In the beginning, the piano intro over the slide, that's such a good harmony with the two of those instruments together. It was really, really cool. I was curious if you can remember what effects were you using, what effects were you using on your guitar in that track?
Well, not much. I mean, that's the nice thing about working with a keyboard player is you can have pretty dry, normal sound, and it's not, you know, it's a lot more filled up because the keyboards are there.
Yeah, very true.
But on that, I mean, obviously I'm playing slide, and you know, in the mix, you know, the engineer might have put some delay or reverb on. I had actually brought a delay and a reverb pedal, but the engineer was like, "Oh, let me do that." So turn those off.
Okay.
So I think I just had. I mean, usually I have 3 distortion pedals so I can have different levels of distortion.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, one is like, you know, Malcolm Young, you know, just enough where if I hit the guitar hard, you know, it sounds like a rock band.
What pedal is that usually?
That's it's one of two. It's either a Mojo Mojo TC Electronic pedal or a Exotic Effects AC booster.
Okay.
They're similar to each other. Just one's yellow and one's brown, and so sometimes I get tired of looking at the brown one. I just want to see some yellow. So
right.
They both sound great. And then the one before that, I think on the record I was using a Supro drive.
Okay.
And which has sort of a spongy attack on it, which I like, especially on the higher strings, so they don't get too screechy, and then they're kind of, the attack is like, it sort of spreads it out so it's a little bassier, and gives, just makes the thin strings sound a little thicker. And then if I really wanted sustain, actually on that record I had the Mojo Mojo at the end, like on all the time. I had the Supro on for my main, you know, the sort of boost. It tended to be on all the time, but I turn it off just so it's not noisy when I'm not playing. That's my noise gate, is I turn it off. And then I have the AC booster at the beginning for, you know, if I really needed like a lot of sustain, if I'm doing a lot of like hammer-ons and pull-offs, and I need to do is to be as loud as a pick note, then I'll turn on the AC booster. And the thing there, you know, when the guitar becomes that sensitive, what you gain in terms of like making your pull-offs and hammer-ons get louder, you kind of lose in terms of, I shouldn't say lose is not the right word, but you have to work harder to make the guitar not be noisy, and you have to work more to control the string noise.
Okay.
And that's the thing I discover a lot in teaching is like, you know, to me that's like the one of the fatal flaws of tablature is like the tablature says like, okay, put this finger here, It's like, no, the job is not done at all because you still have 5 other strings you got to control.
Okay, right.
And it's if you actually do that the way it's written, you'll barely even hear that note because all the other strings are going to ring out and feedback. If you're playing with a fire-breathing tone, is usually the case. So on my online school, I'm always sometimes more than half of it is like, okay, you want to play a note, we got to mold the rest of your hand and maybe this part to get.
It's really great that you teach that because that's important.
Yeah, well, it never really occurred to me to teach it until I had so many students with that issue.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, I had to take a look. What am I doing? And oh, wow. A lot of it had just come from being a kid and playing in a small room with a loud amp, and sort of figuring it out by instinct. But if you haven't done that, you
gotta learn.
Somebody show you. So now I'm the thinking part of my brain knows all the tricks.
That's cool, man. Let me ask you a question. Again, if someone, Behold Electric Guitar, that song, Let That Battery Die, your song titles are really cool, especially since it's pretty hard to name instrumentals. It's not.
Yeah. Almost all those began as vocal songs.
Oh, okay.
So I wrote lyrics like that song is, what was it? The key.
That's the keyboard part you're playing.
Yeah. Well, I wrote it on guitar initially.
That's so cool.
And my battery's low, but my mind is high. Put the phone in my pocket, take a look at the sky. I really don't care, let that battery die. So I really don't care, let that battery die. And I was my own worst enemy. So I had, I wrote a whole first verse and chorus for it. It was actually, I wrote it for Mr. Big, and we never finished it. But I always liked it. So and the nice thing about doing it that way is like I'd never had to write a second verse.
Yeah, you locked in on the melody. Yeah.
It's sort of like a scaffolding, you set it up and it helps you build the structure, and then when it's done you can pull it away. I mean, some of the songs I did write more than one verse, and maybe even more verses than I actually used in the arrangement, just depending on what I was inspired to do. But just about every song on there, maybe with the exception of Blues for Rabbit, I think it was.
That's what I was going to ask you about next. Love that. It's like a blues in A, really fun tune. Who's Rabbit? Is there a particular?
Rabbit is Johnny Hodges.
Oh, shit. That was his nickname?
That was his nickname.
Oh, that is so cool. I'm definitely going to look into him.
Yeah.
That is a great song, man.
Yeah. And it's inspired by like a lot of the blues melodies that I learned from listening to him, but also inspired by Freddie King. Freddie King had this tune called Hideaway.
That great tune, man.
Yeah. And Hideaway it's basically just like, I don't know, 4 or 5 blues melodies, just one after the other. It's just sort of a catalog, like here's blues melody 1, and now here's blues melody 2, and blues melody 3. And in the middle he does that Peter Gunn thing where it straightens out, because most of it's a swing, most of it's a shuffled, but then when the Peter Gunn hits, it goes no, and it straightens out, and it doesn't swing. And so that's what I did with mine. I thought like, well, I want to just
very cool.
I'm just going to pick a bunch of like swing parts, and in the middle I'll straighten it out. And so I kind of followed that format, but then took what I sort of what was inspired by listening to all that Johnny Hodges stuff.
Really cool. Love that song, man. What guitars did you use for the record?
2 guitars. Most I'm right here. Hold on.
Let's check them out. All right.
I think I used this one the most. It's actually a modified Ibanez FRM. I think it began its life as a FRM 150, which is the one with the 2 humbuckers and the single in the middle. And I wanted to try out these mini humbuckers that DiMarzio was making for me, And so I had an extra one of these guitars, and so I had my tech make a new pickguard and put those in, and that turned out good. Of course, it's got the slide magnet on it. So
that is so cool. I was just looking at that. That is really handy, isn't it?
Just helps you get it and put it back.
Wow.
And I've got a guitar repair guy in Portland, and we've been. I showed him. I just told him the idea of like, can you put a magnet under there? And he got some, and we've been doing a bunch of those. And then the other one's pretty much identical. It just only has the two pickups.
Two pickups, right?
Yeah. And also a slightly stronger slide magnet.
Yeah.
And I think on this one, the red one, I think I had 8s, and this one had 9s. So
very cool.
That was the big difference.
That's awesome, man. That just a really cool record, man. It was it was a fun record, I thought, man. It was a real fun record listening to it. I mean, great playing, but it was fun. It's nice to listen to something that's fun, Where'd you originally grow up? You said Pennsylvania somewhere.
Yeah, I grew up about an hour out of Pittsburgh. It was Greensburg was the nearest town, but it was actually closer to Delmont.
So it's like near Ohio, wasn't it?
Well, it was. That was the next state over, or West Virginia, depending on if you went north or south. When I was a kid, or a teenager, we used to do gigs in West Virginia sometimes because there was a college in Morgantown. I had my first big opening, support gig there. We opened for Foghat.
Did you really?
Yeah.
How old were you then?
I was probably 15.
That's a serious gig.
Yeah, but that's what I was hoping for, because it was like, the bass player would book the gigs. He's like, yeah, we got a gig with Foghat. I'm like, oh my god! I pictured. I thought we were going to play a stadium, and it turned out, it was like later on in Foghat's career. It was like early '80s, and it was like the same club that we would play. And I couldn't believe it. Like, what? I thought we were going to play some big, exciting venue. And it's like, right. We're playing the same club we always play.
That's funny, man.
And it never occurred to me that a band could have like a sort of
a trajectory down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I thought there were some stadiums forever.
Your playing has been over your career pretty ferocious at times. You need a lot of physical and emotional energy to do that. You can't just like casually do that, especially as skillfully and passionately as you've done it for that long. I was curious if there's like some particular emotional angst that has driven that, because that's usually the source of that.
Well, I was a teenager.
Good point. Yeah.
And I was a very well-behaved teenager, maybe because I had that outlet. But I think it was just, I was at that perfect age when the first Van Halen album came out. I'd already been playing guitar for a couple of years. I was a big Led Zeppelin fan, and then Van Halen 1 hits, and anybody who was around when that came out, it was just it just melted everybody's face. It was just unbelievable. And then I got to see the tours. I didn't see the first tour, but the second tour, which was their first headlining tour. My dad took me to the theater, and we saw. We were in the same building with the real Cats. And we got to watch them play. That was life changing. Just the energy, and also to be just with that audience, and knowing that, because in my school, even though Van Halen was a successful band, I was the only Van Halen fan at that time. Everybody else,
really?
Everybody else into Bruce Springsteen or something. And
why?
Or just into nothing. It was
because it was so rural, or
I was thinking in 7th grade, and kids were still into whatever they were into, and
maybe you were ahead. You were probably young to be a fan of Van Halen. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I remember, I remember the other kids started getting into Van Halen when 1984 came out, and actually that was like, I didn't want them, but by that time, like, Van Halen was mine. And for like the clicky girls to like Van Halen, I was like, no, you can't like this. This is not for you.
Yeah.
This is for me. and so, I felt some ownership, and I didn't want, I only wanted the people that I approved
Yeah, yeah.
to dig Van Halen.
Did they
But
listen?
anyway, but I saw them on every tour after that. I saw a lot of concerts. I saw, Randy Rhoads with Ozzy twice. I got to see Iron Maiden open up for Judas Priest on the,
Wow. Was that Paul Di'Anno Iron Maiden or?
No, it was Bruce Dickinson, but it was, the Number of the Beast and Screaming for Vengeance tour.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
Just, saw Cheap Trick on the Dream Police tour and a small theater. Pat Travers with Pat Thrall when Tommy Aldridge on drums.
That's pretty intense.
Just really great concerts, and I guess with the you'd have I had the dream or the fantasy. You'd see Van Halen packing this arena, everybody loved them, and you'd think, if I do that, maybe they'll love me too. And not only that, it was just like I would try it, and I could kind of do it. Maybe not exactly the same. I mean, it was, a lot of the fast stuff was so quick, I could never really tell if I was getting it right. But I could get things that were in the spirit.
Yeah.
What he would do. And I was in bands, and so like the other band members would respond and go like, "Whoa, dude," and so there was always, even at a small level, people responding well to me going for it. And that's exciting, to have
hell yeah,
to have people around you smiling and saying, "Hey, gotta hear Gilbert, man. Listen what he can do." And so that was really encouraging, and so both from the outside and inside, it was just like, man, the more I do this, the better it gets. And also, it's funny hooking up with Mike Varney, and I still loved songs. Like Mike does too. He's a huge music lover of all kinds, but he knew his market.
Yes.
And he's not only a musician, he's a record company owner. So he's like, he knew that the way to sell records in his niche was like have records that are just nonstop guitar insanity.
Yes.
And so I would send him demos, and I was already sort of unofficially signed at this point. He had heard a lot of stuff, the cassettes I was sending.
Hang on a sec. Just for people who aren't sure, Mike Varney was the owner of Shrapnel Records, or still is the owner of Shrapnel Records, I think.
I don't know if it, I don't know if it exists now.
I don't even know. Yeah.
But for decades, it was, popular indie guitar record or record label. And so, I would send him the songs I was writing, and he'd come back and like, well, there's a couple holes, fill those.
That's really cool.
Just like put guitar everywhere. And he kind of had an interesting way of putting it. He said, someday you're probably going to join some big band that'll be, really successful. They're not going to let you do this.
Interesting.
So do it now when you can.
Wow, that was interesting.
Yeah. So he's like, do you think? I don't remember if he said this exact example, but he said, like, look at Journey. Do you think Neil Schon is allowed to, like, do solos every 2 seconds? No, he gets this like one little 8 bars in the middle, and the rest of the time he's got to lay back and play rhythm. And he's like, I'm telling you, go for it now. Fill up every bar. Go
That's
wild.
So cool. That's really honest that he told you that.
Yeah, and it actually wasn't exactly my instincts. I mean, I really liked backing up the singer, and because of what I'd grown up listening to with pop music. I thought like, okay, I'd back up the singer and then get my 8 bars and do my thing, and that's sort of what I thought. But Mike was much more. Most of the stuff he does instrumental. My band had a singer, and we were one of the few that did.
Yeah.
I was always, I wanted that.
Was it the pop attraction that you had as a kid that you wanted that in there?
Yeah, I mean, all the music I listened to was. I mean, you mentioned like the Jeff Beck album before. Yeah. I mean, I remember my neighbor had those, and I was really curious about them because the covers were great.
Oh yeah.
Like Jeff looked so cool on the cover of Blow by Blow and Wired.
Yeah.
And then I said, can I borrow those records? And I brought them over, and it was just like these kind of weird synthesizer sounds, and then no vocals, and then Jeff sort of jamming Mixolydian, and and it didn't have the when I would listen to Led Zeppelin, there was a lot more fiery it seemed like a more fiery band. Like Jimmy Page would kind of hit harder, and certainly John Bonham, had a heavier
Oh
groove,
God, yeah.
and Robert Plant was just killing. And so I was always more into the bands that had singers. And once in a while, like I remember, reading the Van Halen interview where he mentioned Alan Holdsworth. And so I listened to some of Holdsworth's stuff, and I actually really liked it. It took some listens because it was so harmonically advanced compared to what I was used to.
Sure.
But I like the Holdsworth records, and was there any other instrumental stuff? I mean, there's the occasional Rush instrumental.
Yeah. Any low points or dark periods you've had to deal with in life, and how'd you get through them?
I think when I did the record Stone Pushing Uphill Man, relatively recent, that was a hard time. First of all, my hearing had gotten to the point where I needed hearing aids, but I didn't have them yet. I hadn't gotten any yet, and so I was trying to deal with just living without being able to hear people, like understand language.
Yeah.
Basically, the whole world became a foreign country.
Right.
And I can still email, and you do that a lot these days, and so I kind of felt like I was getting by.
Yeah.
But one of the results is certain things in my life started to really, really go south, and I made some pretty bad financial decisions because I just couldn't hear my financial advisor, and so I'd agree to anything, just like, well, he knows what he's doing. Okay, it's sign stuff, and lost a lot of dough during that period. And I also kind of didn't really have a vision musically of what to write. And so I did a covers album, like basically Stone Pushing Uphill Man is like all covers. I mean, I wrote a couple songs. The one instrumental that I did write was Stone Pushing Uphill Man. It's not actually not instrumental, it's a vocal song. But it's like based on Sisyphus, that I think it's a Greek myth of a guy that his fate is that he has to push this huge rock and labor and work hard, and right when he gets to the top, it falls back down. And that's what I felt like at the time. I felt like, man, I worked so hard to like, build everything in my life, and it felt like just everything crumbled. And so that was that record, and I felt like I just had to keep going, and covers was the way to do it. Because I was starting to get interested in melody, and I really didn't have the vision of what I should write myself very much. So I thought, well, I'm just going to play other people's melodies that I like, and at least that'll sort of get my fingers moving and get me doing something. And so I did that record, and after I broke through that, I think things were better. And so especially when I did the Behold Electric Guitar record, that was I really enjoyed the process, and I enjoyed writing it. And that's one of the hardest things, at least for me, to do. Is I tend to think that writing should be like this hard, difficult thing. You got to work and put effort. And it was actually Neil Morse I was talking to him once about writing. And he didn't say this to me directly, but he communicated it in just the way he was speaking. He loves to write. He just loves the process. I got the feeling that even if the stone fell back down at the end, he just loves the process so much that he would keep doing it. And that was a brand new and exciting idea to me, because I had never really enjoyed the process. It was like, oh, you got to work and work and work. And then at the end, you have something that was worth the effort.
Yeah.
But the idea of like actually liking the process, I never thought of that before. And then I sat down and I was like, okay, well, today I'm going to write a song, and I'm actually going to enjoy writing it. And I think that started with the Vibrato album. And it changed the way I wrote, because I would start writing and go like, well, I'm not enjoying this. And go like, well, then forget that idea. Keep looking until you find something where it puts a smile on your face. And then when you find that thing, the next part has got to be something that puts a smile on your face too.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily all have to be happy music. It's just got to be something where when you hear it, it feels, it connects and it feels right. And it's what you want.
At the end of my show, I always close my show when I say happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. And that is one of the most valuable things I've ever learned. That you can, sometimes we have this thing in our head that like, well, we got to drive through fucking walls and then we've earned it. And it doesn't really work that way unless you want it to. You can choose, as you've done, to do otherwise. It sounds like losing your hearing has really, to be honest with you, led you to a lot of other things that have probably given you a lot less stress and more peace and more
Well,
happiness in a sense.
I would, if I could have it back, and
Of course.
I would. But at the same time, it has taught me things, and it's made me look at things in ways that I really value.
Yeah, it sounds like it, man.
And and with emotions, I always thought of the metaphor the other night that emotions are sort of like driving on ice, where you can steer towards happiness, but you might do a lot of sliding around on the way. You can't just say like, okay, I'm going to be happy. You sort of go, okay, happiness is over there. Whoa, and you might skid off, but eventually, if you keep aiming and steering toward it, you'll eventually.
Well, you got to figure out what that is.
Yeah,
because if it's a new thing, it's like, whoa, what does this happiness thing look like? At least I did anyway.
And it's something. What was I thinking about? Well, I'm specifically with the songwriting thing.
Right.
Is I think it's, for me, I was in the habit of not being happy with that. And I had to learn that. I had to learn like, okay, well, this is a bad habit. And it's a habit that really doesn't give me the result that I want. And although it might be hard, I've somehow got to steer myself to do this new thing that I either don't believe in or is new. And that is like, I've actually got to enjoy this horrible thing and get to the point where it's not horrible. And be really mindful, like as I'm writing, like, it's as soon as I feel the ship start drifting, like, oh, this song is boring, I don't like the song anymore. It's like either discard it or go like, okay, well, what can I do that will make me like it again? Because when you're a songwriter, you are the president of the universe. Yeah. That you own that thing, and that's a hefty responsibility. You got to make sure it's a good universe. So it's and there's of course 1,000 ways to do that, and that's the craft. And maybe that's the other thing that was a scary thing that I learned, was that songwriting isn't just Paul McCartney waking up in the morning and he has this melody in his head and it happens to be the best pop song ever written. Yeah. That's sort of like, oh, I woke up one morning yesterday, or scrambled eggs, whatever it was, I just woke up and it was there. Right. When you're 22 years old and you've been paying attention to songwriting your whole life, that might happen 3 times. Sure. But that's not something you can depend on as your career. And when I first started reading books about songwriting craft, it was the scariest thing in the world to me, because I realized I actually have to learn something. Yeah, there's a skill set. I have to know what I'm doing. And I remember one of the exercises was like, write a song and then discard the lyrics and use the same melody and write brand new lyrics about something totally different. And I thought, wow. No, that's impossible, because your initial inspiration is like from, drops down from wherever. And, how can you get that again? And, the craft is, no, you're a songwriter. This is your job. Get to work and make something totally different. And the real cats can do that. That's really cool. That's a really good exercise. And then the more that, fortunately I've been a musician long enough where I have some level of craft that, the toolbox is a nice metaphor. If I'm building something and I look down, there's some tools to work with. Totally. Yeah, totally. And it's not just this hope that I'll wake up in the morning and something will magically appear. And it does, especially when you're younger, but not often enough to really be dependable. And if that's all you have to rely on, good luck. No, and also, like, your framework shouldn't be the Beatles when you're comparing yourself to songwriters. It's like, probably not a good goal to shoot for. It's not realistic for like anybody in the world, I don't think. You got a room full of guitars. Tell me your right now your go-to and your top 3, let's say. Oh my goodness! Well, anything with a slide magnet on it.
Oh, I love that. That is that you have patent on that or something? That's a great idea.
Well, I think it's a great idea, and it occurred to me, but the thing is, like, the whammy bar, which is another great idea.
Yeah.
You can put a whammy bar in any guitar player's hands, and they pretty much have mastered it in the first minute.
Right.
You know, you push it down, you pull it up. I mean, there's guys that have certainly, you know, taken it to a you know, you'll hear Steve Vai do that Lick in the Attitude song. You know, you might have to rehearse that a little more.
Yeah.
But most whammy-ish, it's pretty intuitive. You know, a non-guitar player, that's probably the thing they would do best. You know, you give somebody who's never played guitar a guitar with a whammy bar, and they can go, blah, and it's going to be all right. A slide. It takes some time to make a slide sound good.
Totally.
And so, you know, I tend to, you know, be all excited about it because I've been playing slide for a while now. I mean, it didn't start that way. I've been a bad slide player much longer than I've been a good one. But it's starting to work for me. And one of the biggest reasons is the slide magnet, because it's just always there.
Tell me, man.
It's not in a drawer where I've got to go hunt it down. You know, it's just if I want to tinker with it, boom, it's right there. So, but to answer your question, let me look back. I really, you know, this one I really do play a lot. It's
that's a fire.
The middle pickup is interesting. I really don't use it that much. It looks really good.
Yeah, it looks great.
And it's actually a really good design because it's a really loud middle pickup, and I tend to screw it down pretty close to the body because my pick goes there. And I can't have the middle pickup be up very high because then it gets in the way of my pick. But this is kind of a magical instrument for whatever reason.
That's the Fireman.
Yeah. The one of the things that I like about the Fireman is from teaching, I never would have expected this in a million years. Holding the guitar is like a huge issue. Like there's a lot of people, again, depending on what you're going for.
You mean standing up holding the guitar, or just
I mean sitting down.
Really?
The way people hold a guitar, it's really all over the place.
Interesting.
And it really affects how a person is able to do certain things. And so, you know, I tend to be a right legger, and the shape of the Fireman will not let you do this very easily.
Oh, that's right.
Just like this thing will stick into your knee.
Yeah.
And it's really unfriendly, which I love because I don't want people to play like this. I mean, if they play classical guitar, okay, go for it. But to me, this is like way more rock unless you get your thumb over.
Yeah.
So you can do good bends and get a lot of, you know, it's just more like Hendrix.
Your hands are so massive.
There's no excuse though, because if you got small hands, you get yourself a micro.
That's right. That's right.
This got a little teeny neck on it, so you know you can get your thumb over. And but then again, a lot of the players I see now are like they have it in the middle, and with a big guitar, you know, if you get let's see, I get my Velcro slide magnet on there. If you put it in the middle, you tend to be more like this.
Okay.
And the thumb is behind, and you know, a lot of people they end up being like this, and sometimes they're big people, and you know, I remember I was doing a clinic once, and I asked the guys, like, I want to see, like, is it like, will it fit? Because everybody's got a different body shape, and I'm tall and skinny, and you know, I don't want to get on somebody's case if it just won't work.
Yeah, yeah.
And it kind of didn't. Like the guy was like this, and he tried to put it over here, and somehow it just wasn't working for him. But so I don't really, maybe I'm too harsh on my students, but I really try to get it over here, because it's just, you can get that grip, that rock and roll grip and thumb over thing so much easier. And then here it tends to like put the neck way up in the air, and you end up being like that. And then you get the elbow picking. It becomes like the motorboat, you know, and I found with that, you know, people will get this going, and then they just sort of hope that the left hand will sync up.
Well, that's got to kill your shoulder if you're doing that also, no?
Well, I don't know, because I don't do that. But with this, you can like get a little boost from your shoulder, like a turbo boost from the shoulder, and you can use the wrist and your thumb if you want to. So,
how tall are you, man?
I used to be, when I was in high school, I was 6'4", but I
wow.
When when I started not wearing shoes in the house, you know, Japanese style.
Yeah.
I think the key, like the arches of my feet, I think they flattened out because
Yeah.
my feet got an inch longer, and my height went down an inch. So I kind of slid.
Wow.
I kind of slid down into my feet. So I'm 6'3" now.
Wow, which is still huge, man. I find guitar players either really tall or really short.
Yeah, and again, like as soon as I saw like people without the thumb over, I'm like, I would immediately like, Google Angus Young or Neil Schon, you know, because those are smaller guys. They still get the job done.
That's a good lesson for me to look at as well. So your go-to is the Fireman?
Yeah, I mean the PGM is still wonderful.
Yeah,
but the you know, Fireman's it just seems to resonate really well, and it's also a shorter scale. It's like more like a Gibson scale.
Okay.
And you would think that it wouldn't matter because, you know, I got such big hands. You think, oh, you can stretch anything, but I think because I have learned to stretch a lot, I tend to stretch more than the average player.
Right.
And so having things a little closer together just makes it easier.
It helps
for me
you,
yeah, it makes it a little easier, and you know, the string tension a little less. I can bend easier.
Favorite song you wrote?
Well, the Green Tinted 60s Mind is kind of a magical one. That was one that almost came from the sky.
What's your thought on that in general? Stuff coming from the sky.
I mean, to a certain extent, I think all songs kind of need to start like that, or it's helpful. And that's a nice way to start. It's just the length of them. Like sometimes, if you're lucky, you get, you know, an entire tune that falls from the sky. For me, that doesn't happen much anymore. I'll get like a little piece,
right? And
then you need the craft to build it bigger. But you know, the brain's complex things, and you know, so it's. But if you're always tinkering around with music, and music is big, you know, you have a lot of music in your head, you know, it's gonna do things in there. Things will come out once in a while, especially inspired by life and emotion and music itself.
What's your favorite song to play?
Oh my goodness. The first one that comes to mind is, I haven't played in a long time, is like Not Fade Away by Buddy Holly.
That's interesting.
That's not the correct answer. That's just the first one that comes to mind. But I think the first one that comes to mind is sometimes worth saying.
Yes.
Favorite song to play? Well, lately I've been playing all these vocal melodies on guitar, and I'm going to look. I've got a folder on my desktop it says possible covers, and these are songs I've been working on.
Yeah.
You know, that I could cover on the tour, and so this is in. Let's see. The first one, Pride in the Name of Love by U2.
Yeah, great song.
Which is killer on slide. And, you know, like, that's a really hard song to sing. You know, even Bono, like, if you hear him singing now, you know, he's not going to sustain all the notes, you know, as long as he did in the studio. Probably tune down a half step or a whole step. You know, I can't do it better, you know. But on guitar, those limitations are gone. You can hit it the right note, tuned concert pitch, as long as you want, even longer if you want to kind of rub it in. and it just feels so good to like stand in those singer shoes and just do it without limitations. The next one is Sacrifice, which is a Racer X song, because I was thinking that's one of the more melodic Racer X tunes, and that might be cool to play the vocal line on guitar. Tarot Woman by Rainbow. Got to. You know,
I remember that song.
It's so much fun playing Dio.
Yeah.
On guitar. You know, of course, I love the guitar part. But the I don't want to go. Someone tells me no. You know,
Was that the Blackmore's Rainbow album?
That's on the Rainbow Rising.
Rainbow Rising. Yeah, great record, man.
The next one, and actually I played this at my son's birthday party on acoustic today. It was killer. Wouldn't It Be Nice? Beach Boys song.
Great song, man. Real pretty.
That's a melody, and man, the chord changes are amazing. And actually, the birthday party, I played it on acoustic and sang it, and everybody had to put up my falsetto. Pictures of Home, Deep Purple. And again, these are all like songs where I'm playing the vocal line.
Great song.
Starstruck, Gates of Babylon. Starstruck's, again, off that Rainbow record. Gates of Babylon is Rainbow. Country Girl by Black Sabbath.
That's a great song.
Country girl, body and sunshine, my air slide.
Great song.
Here's one, I'll Wait by Van Halen.
Great song, man.
Which was written by Michael McDonald, or co-written.
Really? I didn't know that.
And I always in my head picture like, you got me captured on the like that. That Michael McDonald style, mustache and beard singing.
That's so funny.
Straight for your heart. and I just thought that might be cool on slide. And
funny as hell, man.
Turn It On Again by Genesis. You Can't Always Get What You Want by the Stones. That might be interesting.
Great song, yeah, man.
Let's see. Oh, Joe Cocker, Feeling All Right. That one I'm probably going to sing at this jam coming up in Germany, and I'm scared because there's so many lyrics and I don't know any of them. But if I do it on slide,
yeah, that's probably within your range for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I think that's smart.
And that's an easy one to jam. It's only 2 chords and there's no changes.
Dave Mason wrote that, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I had him on the show.
Or either that or Leon Russell.
Yeah,
Leon Russell, I know, did a version.
I think Dave wrote it actually. I think.
Yeah, and then here's one that I never heard until recently because I googled 100 best singers in the world, and there was a Rolling Stone magazine list of them, and I just went through and because most of them I was familiar with, but some of them I'd go like, oh, I know about that person, but I actually don't really know their music. And I thought Dolly Parton, like, of course I know about her.
Sure.
But, and I know she wrote that Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You, which might be great. But she had a song I'd never heard before called Jolene.
Oh, God, that is a great song, man.
And I thought, and I heard it, I was like, man, that's a killer tune. That could be cool on slide.
Yeah, that's a great song, man.
Yeah. And then
really good song.
Another one I'd love to do, but it's actually a little low. The range is Tom Jones, What's New Pussycat.
Yeah, that's a good song. He's got a bunch of good songs, actually.
Well, that's Burt Bacharach tune.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he's still touring. He's like 88 or 90.
Yeah, and he's one of my favorite writers. It's so good. And so that's smattering.
Yeah. So you got a bunch of cool stuff there, man. Tell me your top 3 Desert Island discs, just for right now.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. Well, there's way more than top 3, obviously. So the first 3 that come to mind would be Rubber Soul. I'm reading the Jeff Emmerich book right now, so all the Beatles stuff's in my head. First Van Halen album, and Tapestry by Carole King.
Oh, interesting.
And if tomorrow would be totally different. Those are just first
3 like 20 minutes from now it might be different.
Yeah.
That's just a knee-jerk question. Best decision you've ever made?
Well, my uncle, when I'd been playing acoustic for about 2 years, and I got my first electric, and it was like a howling feedback demon that I couldn't control. And he said, use your volume control when you after you're finished, and just turn it down. and he said, when you're playing, put your hand on the bridge. And I listened to him. And the third piece of advice was practice all the time.
Good stuff, man.
Armed with those 3 tidbits, I was set for life.
You sure were, man. I thought you were going to say the slide magnet.
Well, that's recent. Was
your best decision you ever made. Most important things you've learned about yourself?
Oh, my goodness. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is like how to deal with flaws, how to fix stuff that's wrong. And it takes a while to learn what's wrong because, you can't help but follow your instincts. Your instinct just feels right.
Sure.
And so, eventually you learn that some of the things that are my instincts really are not helpful or making everybody around me miserable. So why not try to deal with them? And even if I do feel them and I can't ever change that, at least I know, don't do that stuff, figure out a way around it. And one of them was, I used to, and maybe this is, maybe I still deal with this, is I tend to be like a really agreeable person. And a lot of people, when they work with me for a while, they're like, I can't imagine you ever being angry. Until I'm angry, and then I'm a freaking nightmare.
So because you're so agreeable, you're not
and then resentment builds.
Yeah,
And,
the shit. You're like, fuck. Why do I agree to all this shit? It doesn't make me happy. And then
and then I explode, and then it's really unfair because the explosion is often not really related to the thing that actually set it off.
Yeah. Wow.
And then everybody's like, "What's up with you?" And so fortunately, the explosions are few and far between, but they're really unfair to whoever is in the room at the time. And so really the thing, and I don't know how to do this, is to be less agreeable kind of over on a daily basis.
Well, don't look at it as, because when you say, it's hard to, I'm going to be less agreeable.
Or to be more, what do you call it?
Just
word that begins with an A.
Just set better
assertive.
boundaries.
To be more like self-assertive and not always go like, oh, it'll be fine. We'll just, and that's the thing about, like, and with my band situation, it works really well for me to be the dictator, because that stuff never builds up, because everything kind of goes my way. And so I'm a pretty nice dictator, I think, because everything's going smooth and there's nothing for me to ever get mad about. It's more in situations where there's no definite leader and you've got to compromise and you've got to, like, take other people's, you got to compromise is hard.
Maybe I'm just thinking about what you said. Maybe don't use the word aggressive, direct. You want to be, maybe don't use the word aggressive, because who the hell wants to be more aggressive, but be more direct.
Well, assertive was the word.
Oh, assertive. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought you said aggressive. Sorry about it. Yeah.
You kind of stand up for yourself. You say like, okay, well, but whenever I find myself like going like, I've got to stand up for myself, I always have self-doubt. Like, well, do I actually deserve to stand up for myself? Like,
oh my God.
Are these feelings I have, so either they could be wrong, or they, it's just, it'll pass, it doesn't matter so much. So,
so you rationalize yourself back into
exactly
being passive.
And it's probably just fear of confrontation.
Yeah, well, you know what? A lot of people are like, that's a big problem. A lot of people struggle with that. I have other shit. That's not something I do, but I have other shit. But yeah, that's not an uncommon thing.
So we'll just have these interviews once a week, and I can, like, don't have to.
If I'm your therapist,
you're my therapist now. This is great.
You must be really fucked up if I'm your therapist. I am ill qualified for that position for anybody. Trust me. I just always try to think of these things, because I got enough shit all on my own, and I'm always trying to think of, you get to be a certain age, and if you have a certain level of introspection, I think it's normal that you try to think of these things and how do they work. At least I have, how to be a better person. How do I?
Well, when you get older, you've made the same mistakes over and over often enough, where you start to step back and go like, maybe there's a way not to keep stubbing my toe on the bed every day. Maybe I should move it over an inch, metaphorically. Yeah.
And you know what? For me, it's gotten easier to make changes as I've gotten older, because it's like, I'm done. And it's just, I don't have to go through this, because I've, like you said, I've already done it a million times. Like, I'm done. I don't need to do this anymore. I just need to figure out what to do instead. But like, it's not the behavior. It's like, I gently lay it down. I'm good. We're done. It's like a very nice, amicable divorce, and which I'm really grateful for it, because I don't need any more stress, especially that I've imparted to myself.
Probably hardest to change when you're a teenager, because you haven't had a chance to mess up yet.
Well, plus you think you're right.
Yeah.
I'm right. I know more than anybody.
And you haven't had a chance to try out and see. So that's you got to sort of like, you got to burn yourself a couple times to find out what's hot.
Yeah, tuition. Absolutely, man. Good. So leads us to the next question. Good question. What's your definition of happiness?
Oh, let's see.
And by the way, I got to tell everybody, Paul did not look at any of these questions beforehand. You are like crushing it, dude. Usually when people
are there some people who are like, well, here's the thing I've learned about like, since I've had the good fortune of doing a lot of interviews,
right,
is it's tempting, being the interviewee, to have an answer for everything,
right?
If somebody asks you something, you sort of feel, well, now that they asked, I should talk. And a lot of times after an interview, I'm like, oh, that was embarrassing, because I had no idea what I was really talking about, and I was just yapping, because I'm in the yap chair, I'm supposed to be talking. And then I was thinking, like, that answer didn't make any sense. That's not really what I really think, because I don't know what I think.
Yeah.
And so I try when I remember to say, like, I don't know the answer to that question. Unfortunately, we're talking about music primarily, so that's something I've spent enough time with.
Sure.
Where I usually do have the answer. That's nice. But what is happiness to me? That's I step back and think about that one a little bit.
Totally
But
cool, man.
but step one, I just think, like, okay, when I feel happiness the last time, and why was it? And I love riding my bicycle. I live in Portland, Oregon. I've lived for about 3 years, and I have a bike, and I if, on a good day, I'll run 3 errands on the bike. I'll get coffee in the morning, and I'll,
Does that everybody in Portland does that, right? Yeah, isn't that like you have to do that? Get coffee in the morning.
Well, I need coffee in the morning because I'm a dad, and there's literally in a very real way, there's less time in the day, and I need more time. So the coffee gives me like an extra hour and a half of like brain function. So there's that started happening in LA, but there's a lot of good coffee available, and it's bike distance. So I get on the bike for the coffee, get on the bike for lunch, and get on the bike for there's a really good pie place. So after dinner, I run over and get a slice of pie.
And you got, like, you're slim as hell, man. You must have great metabolism.
It's all right.
Dude, it's got to be better than all right. You're like.
But the thing with the bike is it's not big hills, but there's a hill.
Oh, hell yeah!
And so the pie place is probably it's about 15 blocks, and so it's a little, some effort getting there, and I'm always happy when I'm on the bike.
That's cool.
And so I think actually, when you think of happiness, you think of like, your mind or your emotions or your spirit. I think the body's a big part of it. Just getting like physically moving is. You mentioned before the interview, like, you want to edit anything out. I'll say this in such a way where hopefully we won't have to. Going to the bathroom. I found sometimes that'll just, like, you go to the bathroom. Wow, I'm so happy. I think that.
I could just see this on Blabbermouth.
Yeah.
Paul Gilbert says, "Go to the bathroom, make him happy." I totally.
It always surprises me. It's like, that was it. That was where the bad mood came from.
You're a customer.
But that's a very physical thing.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Physical activity is incredibly important, man. I just was in the gym this morning. I'm in there 5 days a week. It's a life changer, man, for me. So
basically, just like, everything, the body working correctly, and then besides that, just having whatever you do, your actions, be like perceived by others to be positive. Basically be appreciated for your work. And I've learned that from the contrast. Like, because if you do something that you put effort into, and somebody doesn't like it, or the opposite happens. Like, you put effort into something, and somebody's like, "Oh, that's either sucks," or "that I'm mad because you did that." That's like the worst thing.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you learn about something from its opposite.
Yeah, totally.
You can learn the most about happiness by like misery, and and then you realize, like, oh, well, you just turn that around, and when you do something and somebody goes like, "Oh, I'm so genuinely glad that you did what you did," that's that definitely puts you in a good state of mind.
Another tough question, right along the same vein, man. And like I said, you're crushing this, man, because most people, when they don't have the questions, are like, "Holy shit, I should have got the questions," like, all the time. Half the people. What do you like most about yourself?
Oh, I don't know. Well, that's. I don't know if I'm going to crush that one. I have to think about it.
It's not an easy question. It's not an easy. Yeah. It's all right to pause or do anything, man. This is not an easy question. It's not like what's 2 and 2.
Yeah. Well, let me think of like the last time I liked myself.
You sound like such a musician.
Yeah.
Do you know who Adam Zimmern is, by any chance? He's in California. He's plays with guitar player for Ziggy Marley. and he plays in a band called Vita Blue. He said to me one time, he had the best answer. He goes, "How can I answer that question when I have so much self-loathing?" Like such a musician about it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm okay with myself. I guess, I don't know. I mean, obviously the fact that it's taking me, a while to come up with that answer, it means I don't sit around and like make lists
A list of
of things that I like about myself. That's not a place where I spend, spend time thinking. So, and I think the reason that I don't spend time with that is I kind of want to keep moving and accomplishing. I want to take advantage of pushing that button, and so it almost doesn't matter. It's not something that I feel like, oh, I need to stop pushing the button because I need to make a list of things I like about myself. It's just I don't really need that list. It's just there anyway. So maybe I'll never know that answer, because as long as the button keeps, and maybe like when I'm older and the button gets creaky or nothing comes out anymore, then I'll have to go like, well, what do I like about myself now? Because I've got some time to think about it. But at the moment, I'm too busy to deal with that.
Well, maybe that's what you like about yourself, that you keep pushing the button.
Yeah.
That could be.
It's a good button.
Yeah, man. Best childhood memory.
Oh, there's a bunch of those. I had a nice childhood. The one that comes to mind, my boy just had his 5th birthday, and so it reminded me of my 5th birthday. And I'm sort of proud of this. Maybe this is one thing I like about myself, is my parents invited my friends over. Maybe there were like 5 friends, and they came over to the house, and my mother had organized, pin the tail on the donkey and cake and with hats and the usual birthday party things. And I got the present that I really wanted for my 5th birthday, which was a toy electric guitar from the Sears catalog. And it came, and I was so excited when I got it that I pulled my mom aside and I said, "Mom, can you tell my friends just to just have fun, play? I'm going to go up to my room because I want to play my guitar."
Wow.
And my mom said, "Well, they're here right now. They came to see you." He said, "After the party, you can play all night. You can play as long as you want, but they're here. They came just to see you. So it would be really nice if you would go down and play with your friends just for now. Can you please do that?" And I had a, Axl Rose temper tantrum.
A meltdown.
Yeah. And well, I don't know the extent of the meltdown, but I know that physically I stood up and hid under my bed and wouldn't come out.
Wow.
Because I just refused. I was like, no, I can't compromise on this. I want to play my guitar now, and that's all I want to do. And I will not go and do this other thing because this is, I'm going to play my guitar. And my mom took photos of me under the bed sulking.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah. And so, I don't think I'm much more compromising now, and which later on explodes into temper tantrums. But I think at the core of my existence, that is me. Is like I'm that 5-year-old who's like, I just want to play my guitar.
I just want to sit in my room and play my guitar. That's not uncommon for guitar players, man.
Yeah.
Something you miss from your childhood, something or someone.
Or something I miss.
Something or someone that you miss from your childhood.
Well, my hearing.
That's legit.
Yeah, that would have been. That'd be nice to. It would be nice to be funny. That's one of the things that I miss, is that.
You have a great sense of humor.
Well, that's nice, but to be funny in real time.
What do you mean?
And to be in a situation where I can hear what everyone's saying and respond to it. And because right now I've got headphones on, I've got you cranked up, so right. we can have a good conversation. But in most situations, even though I wear hearing aids, they have their limits.
Yeah.
So for example, if I'm in, background noise is killer. So if I'm in, the van from the airport in the band and I are in the van, I'm in the middle seat, and there's, the driver and somebody riding in the front, and a couple guys in back. They can actually hear each other, even though I'm in the middle. I can't hear in back and I can't hear in front.
Oh, wow.
And so I can't participate in whatever anybody's talking about. And I remember in high school, then too, that was like most sarcastic and funny and rebellious. And it was fun to be funny in that way, where you could just, somebody would say something and you just make a sarcastic comment back. And now I can't hear the comment well enough to answer.
Yeah, that is tough.
Yeah, so conversation is takes much more effort, and it's sometimes just plain doesn't work.
Man, sorry about that. That is tough. Hey, 3 more questions. Talk about a specific experience that changed your life or changed the way you think about things.
Oh, let's see. Life-changing happening. Well, I mean, again, the hearing loss in so many ways, but we already talked about that. So, what was a change? This is one of the hardest. You got to be my therapist.
I'll give you a hug after this.
Yeah. one of the hardest, like, sort of forks in the road, where it was a really hard decision, and it was like a heartbreaking decision, was leaving Racer X to join Mr. Big, because I was totally alone with that decision. And the reason I was alone was the Racer X was not only my band, it was my best friends. And it's funny because people, hey, do you guys hang out on your days off? And, with Racer X, we did. I'd go over to John's house. We'd play Scrabble and cook Chinese food, go bowling, and we really, our social life was each other. And I was really tight with those guys. And then, we sort of took the band as far as it seemed that it would go. And we just, couldn't get the big record label deal, which you needed at the time. We couldn't get the big manager. And along comes, a phone call from Billy Sheehan, and, he's hooked up with this great singer, Eric Martin. He's got the high-powered manager, Herbie Herbert, involved. And I just thought, man, I've got this thing I love that I built, great friends, but it's just, we're 3 years into not going anywhere. And this, Billy Sheehan, he's a hero of mine. I used to sneak into clubs when I was a teenager. I loved his playing. I knew all the Tallis songs, and we had already jammed together. He used to come down to GIT all the time, and he'd do like a space seminar, and he'd stop in where I was teaching. We'd jam on Accept tunes, and and I loved Eric Martin's records, and so suddenly there's this amazing opportunity, and I just thought, I've got to go for it. But it was really hard, because I went from hanging out with my friends every day to I don't talk to them anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because they're like, oh, we hate you, we're not going to talk to you. It was more just, it was uncomfortable. It was like I kind of betrayed them, and it was like I just felt so guilty that I was like, oh, I just don't want to, I just don't want to say, hey, how you doing? I'm in this big band now. And actually very quickly we sort of became close again, and we're close now.
Great.
I mean, I'm going to see Jeff this weekend in Lake Tahoe to hang out.
That's great.
And then I'm still busy. I when I say close, I'm as close to them as I am to anybody, which sometimes is actually been a lot of distance still, because we live in different cities. But when I see John, now he's won already. I mean, I love seeing him. He really feels like a close friend. And Bruce, we love each other and always laugh and have a great time. And Jeff and Scott, last time I saw him was he's played with Judas Priest, of course. Yeah. And we had a gig together at a festival in Europe. It was great seeing him. And so that was a hard decision, and I'm really lucky that those guys are still nice to me, and we can still be friends. because there's a certain amount of betrayal on my part. So,
how old were you when that happened?
That was probably might have been 20 or 21, I think.
I give you a lot of credit, man. That is a very, very tough decision to make at that age. I really give you credit. That's a tough one, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I had to decide something.
Yeah, but that's a tough decision to make. That's especially like a 20, 21-year-old kid. It's not easy.
Yeah. Well, I still don't know if it was the best decision, but that's life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I just saw this video. My son turned me on to it about when we make decisions that are uncomfortable, we tend to that we don't have. You had an option, but that we don't have options, you tend to rationalize that afterwards into finding a good thing about it, which is really interesting. There was a whole video on happiness, which I'm always trying to get happier. So
I look at that as like, well, good. That definitely lots of good things happened.
Yeah.
But good things might have happened the other way too. So it would have been different.
You just don't know. Any hobbies outside of music? Besides bike riding?
Besides my bike riding, let's see. I mean, with the computer, my sister showed me how to like take somebody's head and Photoshop and put it on somebody else's body, and that's always.
So you do that a lot.
That's always funny. So that led to me learning how to use Photoshop, which is really useful because these days everybody's. At my level of career, you tend to be your own record company a lot of times.
Yeah. And
so, if I need to, put together an Instagram post or whatever, it's nice to be able to get into Photoshop. And I mean, it's just funny. I did that on the G3 tour. I had done a benefit concert for Cliff Coltrane, which Satriani put together. His record company guy from the old days. And so I came down and I jammed, and there was a photographer. The photographer took pictures of everybody. And then when G3 happened, Joe had those pictures and he put together a poster, or his art guy did, for the upcoming tour. And I didn't like my face in the photo. And so I took the picture and in Photoshop, I put a new face in of me.
Oh,
and
cool.
And I sent it back. And it was funny because I just put a guitar case up and made rock faces in front of it while doing selfies, and then cut your head out and put it in there, and sent it in and said, "Can you put that in the poster?" And they did.
Oh, that's cool, and it worked.
So that's so that's. I mean, I suppose a hobby is not supposed to be like unrelated to music, but that's something. It's I use it for business, but I like. Well, the thing I love is designing guitars in Photoshop. That's because you can. You can take a guitar and try a new finish or different pickup configuration, or make a new pick guard. That's where the Fireman came from. Was
you dicking around in Photoshop?
Yeah, it was me messing around with Photoshop, and I still do that. I mean, I've got 15 Firemen on my desktop now that I'm messing around with.
That's cool, man. Well, you bring them to life, which is awesome.
And I've got my family. My boy's 5. He just turned 5, and I love him to death. So that's fun.
That's a good age, man. You got about 8 more years of good times.
Before he's like, Dad, have you ever heard of hip hop?
Yeah.
It's the best,
No, he'll be hiding under the bed. Trust me.
Yeah.
And then last question, and thank you for everything. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been intentional, and how much is just a natural process of aging?
I think the biggest personality change has not necessarily been in the last 10 years, but it was like right post high school, because I had to transition from being a high school kid to being a professional music business professional.
Yeah.
And I had to learn not to treat everybody like David Letterman treats his guests. and to just, I used to watch David Letterman every night when I would be practicing, my scales. And I developed this sarcastic, New York way of dealing with people. And I really had no dark intention. I just thought it was funny.
Right. It was funny on David Letterman.
Yeah, unless you're the guest,
Yeah.
And so I guess that offended people much more than I realized until later. And I would talk to people, they're like, yeah, basically what happened is I was working with somebody, he said, I'm really surprised. You seem kind of nut. You seem okay. A friend of mine worked with you before, and he said you were terrible.
Oh, wow.
And then I would think about it like, I guess I was, and I moved from the East Coast to Southern California, so I just had to adapt to like being nice,
chilling out a little bit. Yeah.
And I think overall I was nice, but I definitely had a sort of a mean, sarcastic side. My favorite story of my sarcasm was when I was probably maybe 14 or 15 years old, and after school I went to this little convenience store, and I wanted to get a snack, and I was with two friends of mine, and we go in, and there's like some older teenagers who are working there, sort of clerks,
right,
kind of thing, and they're maybe 19, and they're trying to be cool, and their method of being cool is to swear a lot,
right,
and they're just talking to each other, but like they're going like, oh shit, oh, fucking goddamn, what, I have no idea what they're talking about, but it's just, and every other word is some swear word, oh goddamn, fucking, oh shit, fucking fucked up, and
it sounded like you grew up in the Bronx like I did.
Yeah, and I just thought it was funny, and so I went up, and like the snacks that I wanted were behind the counter, so they had to get them.
God, I could tell, I know exactly what you're gonna say.
And I walked up and just in the most normal voice I could conjure, I said, "Excuse me, I'd like a fucking Snickers and a goddamn grape soda."
Oh my God.
And they both kind of stopped, and
like, what?
And it was like it was their language, but so they knew something was wrong.
Wrong context. Oh my God. And you were looking at like, oh, this is going to be like a comedy skit, like on SNL.
Well, I was mocking them, obviously. And my friends were terrified. They're like, they're going to kill you, dude.
Oh my God. That's hilarious.
But they didn't quite work out that they were being mocked until, they just sort of like, they got the fucking Snickers and the goddamn grape soda, and I paid, and then I left.
Oh my God. That's hysterical, man.
Which is maybe not unlike me dressing up in an Elvis costume to be on a cover with Ingrid Malmsteen.
There you go. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh. All right, I got to try to get some composure here. That was very. I don't know that we. I don't know. You'll
never eat a Snickers and a grape soda the same way again.
It's just too much. That was hilarious, man. Let me tell people, you got a bunch of stuff going on I want to make people aware of. So let me get to that. First of all, your Ibanez 30th anniversary signature guitar, the PGM. Talk about that.
Oh yeah, it
slices. It dices.
I would show it to you, but it's in the shop right now because my tech is copying something from it. But it's beautiful. It's just really nice looking. It's funny because I think there is a name for the color of it. It's like champagne gold sparkle or something. But when you look at it, you kind of can't tell what color it is. It's sort of, depending on how the light hits, it's like a little green or a little gold or a little silver or gray. But it's an ambiguous color. And it's got the F holes, as the PGMs do. 3 mini humbuckers, the DiMarzio PG-13s, and a thick enough neck to get the tone that's real, but skinny enough to still be able to play. And actually, the thing that surprised when I got the first prototype, the thing that surprised me was it actually has locking tuners on it, and it just stays in tune so well. It's like playing a piano. I play a G chord, it's like, oh, that's nice. So and it's just a beautiful guitar, and it's kind of amazing to have been having a signature guitar for that long. But I still remember the first one. I think I just put the F holes on to kind of. Well, it was to try to differentiate myself from Steve Vai, because basically the RG body style is the same as the Gem.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
The Gem's got different paint jobs, or it might have like the monkey grip or something, but the outline is the same, I think. And I thought, well, I don't want to be like little Steve Vai. You know, I wanted to have my own thing somehow. But at the same time, I love the guitar because I was like, man, I love the guitar, but you know, I have to somehow make it my own. And at the time, you know, I was starting to be a little bit disillusioned with everything being metal. And I always loved metal music, but I always thought it was silly too. I mean, when Spinal Tap came out, I kind of agreed with it, you know, and so to me, like an RG was kind of a pointy Strat, which was a metal thing. You know, it's pointy. The more pointy it is, the more metal it is. Right. So I thought, what can I do to this guitar? And again, like the functionality was great. It felt good. It played good. It sounded good. The pointiness worked, but I thought I just want to do something visually that will maybe take it in a different direction from like, this is metal. And to me, the F-holes were perfect because F-holes you see on classical instruments, you know, violins and cellos, or jazz guitars.
Yeah.
It's not a metal emblem.
Not by a long shot.
Yeah. So I put the F-holes in there, and then as soon as I did that, I was like, oh, you could put the knob in the switch, and it sort of was a very simple idea that worked.
Cool.
And when Ibanez said, like, yeah, let's make it into your model, like, really? You know, I couldn't believe that. In a way, I felt like I had contributed so little because it took so little. It came so easily. And what I realized since then is,
that's a misnomer.
It's often the things that come easily are the best things.
Yeah, when it comes down to it. Okay, the Ibanez 30th anniversary. Also, you have a ton of content on artistworks.com. Talk about that. I think I've been teaching about 7.5 years now, and the way the school works is that it's just a subscription. So you sign up for 6 months or a year or whatever the time is, and you have access to everything. And that's the least of it. Although there is the stuff that's on there is significant because there's almost 8,000 videos that I've done that are all in the archives. You've done 8,000 videos in 7 years.
Yeah. So I do about 1,000 a year.
Wow, man. You put me to shame.
It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah. and then there's a whole.
Wait a minute, man. I'm still processing. That's 3 videos a day. Wow, man. You're an animal.
After I get off I'm just gonna say the phone, whatever this is with you, my assistant's coming over so he can edit while I film.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's but the way it works is you can, if you're signed up, you can send in a video of you playing, and it can either be something that is related to the course, or it can be just anything. You say, dude, here's me playing something. Take a look at it. And so then I do. I listen to, I watch the video of everybody who sends one in. I watch everyone, and then I respond. And with usually the way I like to respond is a very specific musical phrase that if you play it, it will solve your problem.
Okay. So you respond on a guitar?
Yeah. I mean, I talk too.
Okay.
But every one of the videos that I respond with starts with me counting to 4, if the song, most of it's in 4. And I count to 4 and I play the phrase. And then I explain, like, if you play this, it'll solve, this phrase will make you solve your problem. And so, if you're having trouble with string noise, this phrase will go right to it because I built the phrase around whatever the issue is. And I really I have a blast doing that because it solves my problems too, or at least makes me more aware of how to control the instrument. And it's just so much more. It's quicker and more efficient than me going like, "Hey, dude, well, I watched you play. Hey, nice job," and like having this long conversation of pleasantries.
Yeah.
Or thinking about. I mean, if somebody wants to hear me talk in an interview, they can watch this. But this is, they want to learn to play guitar.
Yeah. So
it just gets right to the point fast, and it helps me focus as a teacher because I'm not sitting there going like, well, it's just I just play the part, problem solved. And it works. People really get better. So I've done that 8,000 times. And if you sign up, you can do new ones. You can send in your own, and then I I have like, there's the question video, that's you. I do the answer video. They get paired together, and I title it, so hopefully you can find it later with the search
Oh,
feature.
so that goes in the archives.
Yeah,
for
that goes in the
everybody.
archives.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So someone could email you like as often as they want.
Yeah, I mean, just, there's some students that have done probably 50 or 100 lessons, and it really is, it's cheap, because you can send them in as often as I mean,
Wow.
there might be there might be like different programs where if you pay, there might be like a discounted one where you can only send in 5 questions.
Sure.
I don't even know. I don't pay attention to that part.
Yeah.
I'm the teacher, not the administrator.
No,
But I know. I mean, it's like $1 a day or something. So it's really an amazing deal.
Ridiculously cheap. That's awesome, man. Very cool. With the PGM, is it true that if somebody buys the 30th anniversary and sends it to you, you put in a slide magnet?
Well,
you're so intent on the question. I felt bad even asking it. You're like zeroed in. Sorry, man.
No worries. Well, if the slide magnet, it's not rocket science. You rat out a hole underneath the pickguard.
It's rocket science.
Epoxy a neodymium magnet in there, and wait for it to dry, and then screw the pickguard back on. But my guy at Eastside Guitar Repair and on Hawthorne Boulevard in Portland, he can hook you up. He's done all mine for me.
SlideMagnetsRUs.com. The new album, Behold Electric Guitar. If you haven't listened to it, I really want to encourage you to check it out, and all of Paul's other work. It's a great record. It's a happy, fun, great guitar record. You have your Great Guitar Escape coming up next summer in the mansion at Glen Cove on Long Island. When will you be posting stuff about that?
Well, right now we're working out who the other guests are, and the actual date. And when they tell me, I'll tell you.
Awesome. So go pay attention to Paul. Your website is paulgilbert.com. Was it Paul Gilbert Music? Okay, paulgilbert.com.
And I'm always putting stuff on my Instagram too, which is I think it's Paul Gilbert _official.
Awesome. Paul Gilbert.
And I've got the little blue check.
Oh, dude, he's verified. Did you see? Do you know who this guy Prince Z, PRINCZEE? He's this dude in New York City, and he just makes really funny like juvenile guy videos, and he goes, look, I got verified. He was like going all over the city. He got somebody, he just showed him that he was verified. He went into a Lamborghini dealership and they let him test drive it because he's verified, because he was going to film it. They signed an endorsement page. It was just hilarious. Like,
wow.
Verified. Yeah, it's pretty. I may come to your Great Guitar Escape just to give you a hug and finish this therapy session.
Oh, right on.
Some loose ends. Also, you're touring Europe. September 11th. Talk about that.
Let me look at my dates. We leave. The first show is in the Ukraine. I've never played there before, so that should be cool. In Kiev, we go to have a couple shows in Russia. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I think, if I count it right. Shows in England.
Awesome.
I'm playing like I forget what it's called, like the Ibanez. It's a guitar show in Germany. In Mannheim.
Oh yeah, it's a big guitar show. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm doing a bunch of jam, teaching and jam sessions there.
It's like NAMM of Europe, basically.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's that one, but it's whatever it is. That's in late September, and I'll be there. So I think it's sponsored by Ibanez. And then Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, Slovenia, Switzerland, Italy, Belgium, and the Netherlands.
Awesome, man.
And then I get home and go trick-or-treating with my boy.
Dude, that's very cool. So everybody listening in Europe, go to paulgilbert.com and see when he's coming. Come see him. And you wanted to talk about your hearing aids.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was really fortunate in that, for a couple of reasons. In the old Mr. Big days, once in a while we would get these amazing support slots. We did a couple of years touring with Rush. We toured with Aerosmith, the Scorpions, and we also toured with Bryan Adams. And possibly one of the most fun tours I've ever done with Bryan Adams, because the audience was like 50% girls, which is nice, and like 50% guys, which so there's enough people there who want to rock, and then girls there too. I mean, maybe they want to rock, but it's just
your audience is not.
It's nice to look out there and see like a normal mix of humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, Rush, I wouldn't trade that tour for anything, but at the same time, a lot of guys out there, you know, it's like, it'd be nice to have some girls. Anyway, the Bryan Adams tour was just great. And Brian was great. And so I got to know him a little bit. And Brian is involved with a, I think it's called the Hear Foundation or something. It helps support people with hearing loss. And he found out that I had hearing loss, and he hooked me up with this hearing aid company called Phonak. And they're Phonak. And they're one of the top hearing aid companies in the world. They're based in Switzerland. They invited me to their factory, unbelievable, beautiful factory. And around the same time, Sterling Ball, who was for a long time was the main guy at Ernie Ball Strings, Ernie Ball Guitars, he had just gotten Phonak hearing aids, and he found out that I had hearing loss, and he's like, dude, you got to get these. They're going to change your life. Because because basically from experience, he said, man, they changed my life. He said, I was really like sort of drifting away from the world.
Yeah.
And he said, and I didn't really realize what it was. He said, I was just getting depressed, and I was just things were starting to get bad. And he said, I got these hearing aids, and it was and he recommended this particular audiologist. He said, I got Frank Sinatra's audiologist. He's
out in California?
Yeah, he's out in Palm Springs. Go see this guy. And so I went to see, that audiologist, and he was great because it's like your sound man.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the hearing aids, it's not just like, okay, turn them on and it's loud. There's a lot of
customized to your,
a lot of stuff you can adjust.
Yeah.
And they're really, I mean, even things like where they take, basically your goal in speech is you want to hear like S's, TH, CH, those trebly parts of the language. And I've lost so much in that area where even if you boost them, I still can't hear them. So it actually uses technology to take those sounds and like transpose them down into the area where you still have something, and then boost it up. So it's sophisticated, and the trick is, I'm becoming, I'll be a salesperson for a second. Is step one, you just get a hearing test. It's painless. Physically painless. It can be a little heartbreaking. When you get the result, you go like, "Whoa," But then again, when you know what you're up against, you got a fighting chance of dealing with it. And I remember when I first got them, I thought, well, I'll just wear them on special occasions when I need to like hear something important. Man, within 3 hours, like, no, these are staying in all day, every day, because it's your life, and it's your life is better when you can hear, a little more treble.
You don't know, it's one of those things, you don't know what you're missing until you're there, until you have it, I think.
And the biggest thing is your connection with people.
Yeah, of course.
There was Helen Keller, who's the I think it was her quote. She's famously
blind and deaf.
Managed to overcome as well as anybody in that situation could, being blind and deaf. And she said, when you're blind, you lose the world. When you're deaf, you lose people.
Wow,
and so I'm not deaf, but I've lost a lot of the high end, and that's a big part of language. And as you start to lose that, you lose people. And that's, you don't want to. That's a hard loss.
Yeah, man.
And it will affect. You'll lose money. It will find that thing will find its way into your life and mess you up. And so to me, it's really that's like kind of an important message, I think, because it's you have to be really proactive. You got to go to the doctor and get the hearing test, and then you got to go to get fitted, and it's a process. But again, it doesn't hurt. It's not like getting hip surgery.
Yeah, but they're small. I'm assuming you probably can't even see them.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got them in now.
Yeah, so they're not like the old school, like when we were kids, where you'd see those big, and then it has a thing coming up over there.
Yeah, well, there is a thing coming up over there, but it's small.
Yeah,
and really, like I remember that when I first got them, I was a little bit like, I just thought that everybody was probably looking at it. Nobody was, and literally after a day or two, you don't care if anybody's looking at it, because it's like, this is so much better. I could be wearing a pink
Dumbo ears.
Yeah, I mean, just let me hear.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I want to. My wife's, like I said, struggling with it. I want to make sure Yeah, I got to turn. I'm going to have her listen to this because I think she's at that point. So listen, man, I cannot thank you enough. You're a really sweet guy. I appreciate everything. Thank you for sharing everything.
Just, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
I wouldn't see you when you're angry. Well, you don't know me when I'm angry. But thank you for everything, man. Good luck with the tour, the 30th anniversary guitar, and everything you're doing, man. And hopefully next time you come to Tampa, we'll definitely connect. And thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Right on. Well, thanks for having me on, and keep playing those cool guitars you have behind you.
Hang on one sec. Let me wrap up, and then you and I will wrap up. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this show, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much to Paul Gilbert. Please check out everything he's doing and support what he's got going on between Ibanez, and listen to the new album. It's great. Behold Electric Guitar. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, this is the part you'll dig. Remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.